Members of the House will come to order. Our prayer today will be given by Darnell Edwards.
Good morning. Good morning. Before I pray, I would like to share this scripture with everyone, and it's from 1 Timothy. Amen. Amen. I want to share it here. And it says, first of all, then I urge that supplications, prayer, intercession, and thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings, and for all those who are in high positions of authority, that we may lead a peaceable and quiet life, godly and dignified in every way, which is good and pleasing in the sight of our Lord and Savior. Amen. Well, Father, we do thank you so much for being in our midst. And Father, we ask you this morning to be our mediator, to give us your desires concerning, God, every bill that will be passed this morning. We pray, God, that there will be peace. God, that there will be submission one to another, that it will be a quiet and peaceable thing in the sight of the Lord. And so, Father, we thank you for being our mediator on today. We welcome you here in our presence on today. So, Father, I pray that everything that's brought before you, God, that you will get glory and that you will have the last say so in every vote. And we give you praise, God, and we thank you for everyone present here on today. We speak blessings over their lives, God. And we thank you, Father, for them accepting the position to, God, to stand for us, to stand for all of your people. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Members, today's Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Jack Fincher. He is a sophomore at Wetumpka High School and involved in football and the golf teams.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Speaker, Allman, Baker, Bedsole, Blackshear, Bolton, Boyd, Bracey, Brown, Butler, Carnes, Chestnut, Clark, Klaus, Cole, Collins, Colvin, Crawford, Daniels, Drummond, Dubose, Easterbrook, Ellis, England, Ensler, Estes, Faulkner, Fiddler, Fincher, Fort, Garrett, Gidley, Gavan, Gibbons, Gray, Hall, Hammett, Harbison, Harrison, Hassel, Hill, Hulk, Jones, Hollis, Halsey, Hurst, Ingram, Jackson, Jones, Keel, Kirkland, Kitchens, Lamb, Lawrence, Lee, Lipscomb, Lomax, Lovern, Marcus, McCampbell, McClammy, Mooney, Moore M, Moore P, Morris, Oliver, Paramore, Pascal, Pettis, Pringle, Rafferty, Ream, Reynolds, Rigsby, Robbins, Robertson, Rogers, Sells, Sellers, Shaver, Shaw, Shed, Shiree, Simpson, Smith, Sorrell, Sodhagen, Standridge, Starnes, Stringer, Stubbs, Tillman, Travis, Treadaway, Underwood, Wadsworth, Warren, Witt, Wharton, Wilcox, Wood D, Wood R, Woods, Yarborough.
"60 members have answered roll. Quorum is present. The House is ready to transact business. Chair recognizes the lady from Jefferson, representing Gavan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if I may have your attention for just one moment for this, for an occasion such as this. Many of us awoke 2 days ago to the knowledge that a young man in Birmingham who had just started a career as a firefighter, 28 years old, who just last Wednesday went to work vibrant, upbeat, only to walk into the bay of the Birmingham Fire Department in Norwood and was struck by bullets. He was a close family friend of mine. I've known his mother. She's my sorority sister, and his father, as well as family friends to many of us in the Jefferson County delegation. An unexplainable death in a place that is considered one of the safest places in this country. A fire department, a first responder. So I ask you to join with me, and I want to thank the governor for upping the reward that has been posted, as well as announcing yesterday that the flags of this state will be flown at half-staff in his memory. And so today, if you all would join me, as well as those who have served, Representative Lover and others who are firefighters and volunteer firefighters, if you would come and join with me in the memory of Jordan Melton. And thank you, Mr. Speaker, for allowing me to do this today in his memory. And I ask for this moment of silence in the memory of Jordan Melton. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members.
Thank the lady. Our thoughts and prayers with the family as they go through the difficult times. Please be praying for this family. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Lee, Chairman Lovern.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that leaves of absence be granted for absent members.
Any objections? Hearing none, absent members are excused. The chair further recognizes the gentleman from Lee, Chairman Lovern.
Mr. Speaker, I have a report.
House of Representatives, your Standing Committee on Rules begs leave to report that it has carefully examined the Journal of the House for the second legislative day and finds the same to be correct. Representative Joe Lovern, Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the reading of the journal at length for the second legislative day be dispensed with.
Any objections? Hearing no objections, the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Mobile, Pro Tem Pringle, for purpose of making announcements.
No announcements, Mr. Speaker. Leave the journal open.
Mr. Pringle, you're further recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I move that when we adjourn today, we leave the journal open for the clerk to complete his business, and we reconvene tomorrow, Thursday, July the 20th at 10 a.m. tomorrow, July 30th.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion prevails. Clerk now will receive reports and standing committees and receive those throughout today. The House is now in position to introduce bills and resolutions. Clerk will call the first bill on the regular calendar.
On page 2 of the calendar, House Bill number 5 by Representative Pringle relating to the redistricting of the state's United States congressional districts.
The gentleman from Mobile, Pro Tem Pringle, you're recognized.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Baker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I rise today to introduce House Bill 5. As you know, the Supreme Court ruled that the congressional plan that this body passed in 2021 violated Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act and remanded that we correct it by either producing a second majority minority district or producing a district that provided the opportunity for the minorities to elect a candidate of their choosing. In doing so, we've drawn a district that provides an opportunity for the minorities to elect a candidate of their choosing while complying with other sections of the Voting Rights Act and not racially gerrymandering this state in a way that we think would draw additional litigation. This map before you the current congressional plan, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to focus on two districts. The current congressional plan, the 2nd Congressional District, has a black voting age population of 30.12%. And the 7th Congressional District has a BVAP of 55.26%. Under the proposed map, District 2 would become a 42.45% black voting age population, and District 7 would be a 51.55% black voting age population. A performance analysis shows that the 2nd District will provide the opportunities for minorities to elect or defeat a candidate of their choosing, and depending on the election, it will either go Republican or Democrat, providing minorities the opportunity to elect somebody of their choosing. And the 7th Congressional District remains safely majority minority and protects the incumbent Congresswoman Terry Sewell.
You heard the explanation. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Dallas, Representative Chestnut.
Is it on? Thank you, Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Gladly, to my friend from Dallas County.
Okay, so just wanted to ask you a few questions about your map,
Yes, sir.
community of interest map. So this map is, I guess the first question I have for you is, you are aware of the Supreme Court's ruling, correct?
Yes, sir.
And to your knowledge, this ruling, what does this ruling, what do you see as the directive that's coming from the court?
The court, in my interpretation, reading what, and I don't have my copy of it in front of me, but it clearly said we're either to draw another majority minority district or a district that provides the opportunity for the minority to elect a candidate of their choosing.
Okay, and you are aware that of the analysis that was used, why they came to that conclusion in the first place? Are you
The
not?
Supreme Court?
Yes.
I have not seen it, no, sir.
Okay, you're familiar, you've heard the word jingles, right?
Yes, sir.
Not like jingle bells, but like the
I'm
case.
familiar with the Jingles Decree of compactness, contiguity, and communities of interest. Yes, sir.
Correct. And so it is customary, and I don't want to go into too much legal jargon, but how we got to this point was that the Supreme Court looked at the record that was established in the federal district court in Alabama, that there was a long-standing history of tortured, there's a tortured history for Black people, specifically in Alabama, as it relates to voting, right? And that the 15th Amendment, the whole purpose of that, the whole reason it had to be created was because the right to vote was denied to those persons who had been freed out of enslavement a few years earlier. And the Voting Rights Act emanates from the 15th Amendment, correct?
I believe that's correct, yes. You're the attorney.
And so with that being said, it's very important here. And so with that being said, during Reconstruction, there were about 2 Black congressmen that were elected, right? James T. Rapier and the gentleman from Dallas County. And those gentlemen served, I think, no more than 1 or 2 terms. And then that's when Reconstruction was done away with the Tilden-Hayes Compromise, right? So it had been 115 years since there had been a Black congressman in the state of Alabama when we're drawing the race-neutral maps, okay? 115 years. But it took a lawsuit in order for there to be the first Black congressman, which is the seat that is now Congressional Seat 7. Earl Hilliard was elected to that seat, right? And it took lawsuits and it took a federal court order to make that happen. And so now the population, the Black population, has risen to 27%. And so the court took note of all of this and all of these factors because it's a fact-intensive issue. And it's not across the board. It's not a thing where everybody has to have proportional representation, right? But where the record is established that there is a history of racism as within the context of voting and denying or abridging the right to vote to a specific group of people, those people being Black people in Alabama, the court said that Jingles applies and has compelled this legislature to draft a two majority minority districts if it can be reconfigured in a way that meets the constitutional traditional guidelines. And basically that formula is 3 parts, right? You first need a cohesive, connected nucleus of I guess living patterns, right, for the Black population. Obviously, that would be the community interest, the Black Belt being the epicenter, right? And from the Black Belt, many Black people migrated to the urban areas, Birmingham, Mobile, Montgomery. And so when you look at a map, and District 7 gives us that right, to believe that works, is that the Black folks who were brought here and who worked in the antebellum period, their descendants are still in these same geographical areas, correct?
What I saw on the census data, I would agree with that.
Okay. And so a map can be drawn, and the court did take notice that there were at least 4 maps that Bill Cooper drew that show that it's possible to configure a map that would give 2 majority minority districts while still following traditional and constitutional guidelines, meaning that you had a cohesive Black population. And the area, if you drew the map, it would be compact, it would be contiguous, right? And that you would have equal proportionate numbers for all 7 districts. And so that is possible based on the Supreme Court's ruling. Would you agree with me on that?
Hey, you know, every Supreme Court ruling is open to interpretation, and every lawyer can interpret it a different way. And we've interpreted it as said either draw another majority district or another district that provides an opportunity. And our guidelines, the guidelines that the committee adopted, you know, we have to keep them the core of the existing districts, not place incumbents against each other, and make them as compact and contiguous as possible and to meet the Jingles test.
Okay, I want to ask you this question.
Can I ask, who is Bill Cooper?
He's referred to as one of the mappers.
Is he from Alabama?
I'm not sure. I didn't investigate that beyond what I read.
Yeah, that's the name I've not heard. He's the demographer for the plaintiffs.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so you said earlier it was a matter of interpretation. So I want to read to you what Chief Justice John Roberts of the United States Supreme Court said as it relates to these maps. He said, and I quote, "None of plaintiffs' maps contain any tentacles, appendages, bizarre shapes, or any other obvious irregularities that would make it difficult to find them sufficiently compact. Plaintiffs' maps also satisfied other traditional districting criteria. They contain equal populations. They were contiguous and respected existing political subdivisions such as counties, cities, and towns. We agree with the district court, therefore, that plaintiffs' illustrative maps strongly suggested that Black voters in Alabama could constitute a majority in a second reasonably configured district." That's the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And it's clear that...
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair would like to recognize the lady from Jefferson, Representative Moore.
He'll come back. He'll be back. He'll be back. Good job, buddy. Uh-oh. Hey, Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Gentlemen, I listened to my colleague, and he asked you the question about if you were familiar with the Jingles test. And what I'd like to read here and to ask if you know the 3 steps in the Jingles test for reapportionment.
Compactness, contiguity, and communities of interest.
What did you say now?
Compactness, contiguity, and communities of interest.
Okay, let me read historically what Jingles spoke to. Under the framework the Supreme Court laid out, that Thornburg, and they made reference to Jingles in their ruling, versus Jingles in 1986. Even in that time, they made reference because they were stating that the Alabama map could not stand, and that they agree with the lower courts that Milliken involved such a clear-cut violation of the Voting Rights Act. And so to read off the 3 steps that Jingles states that you must include. And then what I have is a copy to show you the maps that were submitted in the Supreme Court to show that it is possible to draw an additional minority congressional district in the state. And I'll show you those too. Compliance with Section 2 is a fact-specific endeavor that requires analysis of the level of racial polarized voting in the state, a required component of the Jingles test recently affirmed by the U.S. Supreme Court in Allen versus Milliken. the Supreme Court found one, voting in Alabama is highly racially polarized. And if you make reference to people that live in that additional district that you could pull into a minority district, that district contains a high proportion of black voters. It shares a rural geography. It's concentrated in poverty, unequal access to government services, lack of adequate health care. So there is a compact area that people could, where that minority district could be drawn, where people do share certain qualities that are identical. The second thing that Jingles talks about is black voters in Alabama vote in a political cohesive matters. Black voters vote most often for a preferred candidate. And the third part of Jingles' test says that Alabama black population is large and geographically compact, as I read about the district that you can draw, that they are geographically compact enough for voters to have an opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice in multiple districts. Alabama's 2021 redistricting map do not afford black voters that opportunity in violation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act because they contain only one majority-minority district. Black voters have been disproportionately placed in one district, and the remaining black population is split amongst various districts. What I pulled off yesterday to show the maps that were presented to the courts so that you can see that even in the presentation of the courts, there's a possibility, several possibilities that you could have looked at in drawing the maps, and I could show them here. These are the 4 maps that was presented in the court. If you read what the court says, that it shows that black majority congressional districts could be drawn in the state of Alabama. So these are opportunities that you all could have looked at in drawing the map that you draw that would most likely satisfy the requirements of the courts.
Yes, ma'am. And I'd like to point out to the members that this VRA map that you're going to hear.
Oh, this is not the VRA map.
Yeah, that map was never before there was never before the court.
No, I'm not talking about the VRA map. What I'm showing you, Mr. Pringle, are the maps that was presented to the Supreme Court in argument in the Milliken case. None of these are the VRA map. This just shows that in the state of Alabama, and the purpose of me pulling this was to prove, as the court said, that there is a possibility, several options that could be taken to draw another minority congressional district. That's what these are. They are just called Plan A, B, C, D that was submitted to the Supreme Court.
Are those the Castor and Milligan plans that were submitted?
No.
That's not the Castor.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the Castor
This
and
is the
Milligan plans.
information that was presented to the courts that led the courts to say that it was possible to draw another minority district in the state of Alabama. And that's the only thing that I'm showing here, that there are opportunities, and they don't necessarily have to look exactly like the maps that were shown in the Supreme Court, but there are more than 4 opportunities that could have been selected where there would have been a majority minority congressional district if you had that desire to do that and follow the Jingles test to show how you can draw those maps, and then just to go along with the information that Justice Roberts presented in his opinion of why the map that was presented by the state of Alabama was in clear violation of the Voting Rights Act, Section 2.
You know, when you look at the map, our guidelines the committee uses prevents us from racially gerrymandering the state.
You're
And
not.
it is our opinion That is a clear racial gerrymander.
But if
and-
the,
and
but the
those-
Supreme Court did not say,
They did not choose that map.
they didn't choose
But-
any map.
but that-
And I'd like for you to make reference to the fact, what this is showing are the 4 maps that was presented. The purpose of them presenting these 4 maps was to prove the point that it is possible, even beyond these 4 maps, to draw another majority, minority congressional district. And the Supreme Court, nowhere in their argument, in their opinion, stated that any of these maps were racial gerrymandering. But what they did, what this map did address, it addressed those issues that were stated in the Jingles test to deter in drawing congressional seats to include, so that minorities in any state, including the state of Alabama, would have more of a voice in our congressional population. But the courts didn't determine this. That has to be just your opinion that they're racial gerrymandered, because what the court says is that these maps show how Black majority congressional districts can be drawn. And they didn't they did not select either of these maps. They are just proof that the possibility does exist, and it exists based upon the 1986 Jingles test that was used to determine how you can draw another district where majorities will have impact. So, I just ask at any point in time in the maps that you consider, that you all can look at all 3 of the points that Jingles suggested that you do to determine whether your map was within Section 2 of the Voting Rights Amendment.
I thank you for your comments, and I'd like to point out under Jingles, it says a minority sufficiently numerous to form a majority in a reasonably drawn district. Minority voters vote in the same candidate, and 3 experience racially polarized block voting.
That's not
That district,
The lady's time has expired.
and ladies and gentlemen, let me just continue. That district has some severe racial gerrymanders that we think will draw additional litigation because they go in and break 3 counties clearly along racial lines, and we think it's a violation, would have a racial gerrymander problem.
And I disagree.
That's
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Lowndes, Representative Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. For the gentleman yield,
gladly, sir.
how you doing today?
Loving every minute of it.
Loving every minute of it. That's good. That's good. Mr. Pringle, could you, I know you did it once, could you kind of tell me why we're here today and how did we get to this point?
The Supreme Court upheld the lower court ruling that we had violated Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act by not providing an opportunity district for the minorities, because District 2, under our plan, was 31.12% BVAP and was not sufficiently compact or contiguous enough under Section 2 to provide the minorities the ability to elect or defeat the candidate of their choosing.
So you say to provide the minorities the ability to elect the candidate of their choice.
Yeah, a protected class of citizens to elect or defeat a candidate of their choosing.
And so that's how we get to this map here, the community of interest map.
Yes, sir. We decided to provide an opportunity district for the minorities to elect or defeat a candidate without getting into racial gerrymandering.
And could you tell me, what's your definition of an opportunity district?
A district in which a minority could be elected.
So my definition of an opportunity map is totally different from, I guess, your definition. Because I feel like in order for minority to be elected in a specific district, that minority has to be a majority in that district. And so with this community of interest map, when we talked about the 7th congressional district, of course, there's a majority, but the 2nd congressional district, there's not. And it splits communities of interest. Would you agree?
Yes, sir, that's your opinion. In mine, it does not. But that's
So
what we're here to debate.
what's your definition of communities of interest?
I think that the Wiregrass is a community of interest, but remember, we have to draw these plans into a zero deviation. I think there's one person more in the district than the other 6.
So what makes the Wiregrass a community of interest with Dallas and Lowndes County? Because Dallas and Lowndes County, it's communities that suffer with inadequate health care. They're impoverished districts. They're districts where a lot of disproportionate things goes on in those districts. And I don't think that they have people with the same interest, same ideas. So splitting the Black Belt and putting Dallas and Lowndes in District 2, I think that's not
Well, you're just picking 2 of the Black Belt counties. I mean, you've got numerous Black Belt counties in District 2, the same as you have numerous Black Belt counties in District 7.
Well, if you're going to pick communities of interest, I think people in the Black Belt, including Lowndes and Dallas, have more in common with people in Mobile than they do in Henry County, or they do in Houston County.
Well, you know, the VRA plan goes from Mississippi state line to the Georgia state line. And remember this, I mean, your own plaintiffs in your lawsuit clearly testified under oath they were perfectly fine with districts that had 40% or less BVAP. I mean, they've sworn to that under oath that they don't have a problem with BVAP of around 40%.
They sworn that on the oath, or that's just something you came up with?
No, it's under oath. It's in the official court record.
Okay. Well, when you look at this map, I don't see how it will comply with the Voting Rights Act. I don't see how it's going to comply with what the courts ordered us to do. And in drawing this map, kind of what was the standards you used in terms of making sure they comply with the Voting Rights Act?
Those are sufficiently compact and contiguous, and it performs as a district that provides the opportunities for minorities to elect or defeat a candidate of their choosing. We followed the guidelines. We did not pair incumbents together. We kept counties as whole as possible. The only county splits you see are splits for deviation purposes, because this is a zero deviation plan. The same, one district has one person more than the other 6.
Has any analysis been done by an attorney that has actually argued in federal court about election laws and related to this map?
What do you mean by analysis?
Have any analysis done on this map?
Yes, I have, and I released it to the. It shows that on any given election, it can be won by either a Republican or a Democrat. It goes both ways.
Well, we're really not talking about Republican or Democrat, because we're talking about being able to select the candidate of your choice, and that could be.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I was up with the second.
You agree with me?
You know, I believe this district provides the minority population in that district to elect or defeat the candidate of their choosing. Yes.
So, but it was some history given by Representative Chestnut, a little bit followed up by Representative Mary Moore, that it's almost impossible for minorities to select the candidate of their choice if they're not the majority in the district. And in District 2, the minorities is not the majority in that district. So how do you feel like this gives them an opportunity, if history has shown that in order for minorities to select the candidate of their choice, they have to be the majority in that district?
Well, it depends.
Not talking about percentages.
Would they not be able to select a nominee of a party?
The nominee of the party doesn't constitute you having a strong opportunity to win a district.
Well, no, it depends on the nominee of the Democratic Party has the opportunity to win the district, just the same as the nominee of the Republican Party has the opportunity.
But history has shown that even though that's the case, they are the nominees. If they're not the majority in that district, history has shown 92% of the time that they lose that district.
I wish I could see somebody outside of exit polling, but actual real data that shows African Americans in this district voted whatever percent for this candidate and whites voted whatever percent for this candidate. Because once they go into the poll, once they cast their ballot, it's secret. We don't know how you voted. You very well could have voted for Donald Trump, as far as I know. Because your vote's secret. It's protected.
I guess you still didn't answer my question, but I would move to say that we do have a map that's been presented that is in line with what the court said we should do, and that's the VRA plaintiff's map. It has majority minority percentage in District 7, majority minority percentage in District 2. And with this map, what this map tells me is we don't want to do what we was asked to do. The courts asked us to draw a map that would give minority majority to 2 districts. And we just choosing not to do what the court's going to do. So what this map is going to do is say, hey, Supreme Court, I know you told me to do something, but I just refuse to do it. And so with that, I think this map just says, hey, we don't want to do what you say do. And that's been the history here in the state of Alabama. Everything that's been done, it has to be done through courts. And I don't think we should continue to go down that path where the court has to make us do something that we know is the right thing to do. Thank you for your time.
Let me, before you leave, let me just point out, I mean, the performance of a district is tested by looking at the Democratic wins because almost all black voters vote Democratic, and racially polarized voting, blacks vote solidly Democratic. So you can look at the Democrat turnout and determine how the African American community is voting. Do you have another way to determine it?
But here again, it's candidates of your choice. We have a predominant black district here in Montgomery County that we elected a candidate of their choice that was a white male.
Yes, and that was your choice.
And that was our choice. So, but and that's why I'm saying, but the district was majority minority, and that's my argument. In order for minorities to have an opportunity to win a district, the district has to be minority.
The gentleman's
majority.
time has expired.
And I drew that district.
Chair recognizes the
majority
gentleman from
minority.
Jefferson, Representative
and it
Rogers.
chose to elect a white person. I can lead, I can bring them around, but I can't make them drink. I don't want to elect a white person. That's it.
Before I get started, Mr. Speaker, I can't hear him. I said close as I could. Everybody, I know they want to hear, but please let them hear what we got to say. Please, I know they want to hear what we got to say, but it's kind of loud in here. Like everybody laughing and talking because it's not taking this thing serious. So I wish you would get some order in here. I'm just, please. I know you're gonna do it. I gotta talk loud, I guess. I gotta talk loud because it's so loud, so no, I can't hear myself. So I gotta talk loud. Okay, what I want to know one thing. Why is this map saying it's supposed to be the computer, some kind of choice map? Where that name came from? The name by itself is ridiculous.
What did you just ask? I'm sorry.
What you say call this a community of interest map?
Yes.
Now, where that name came from, the community interest map? Why is this a community interest map?
Because it protects communities of interest.
Okay, all right, okay. Now the other thing is that why can't we in Alabama one time do what's right? Now,
We know what the Supreme Court said. So why we want to go down that rabbit hole and don't have a good chance of drawing them out? Why don't we just do it what's right and have a chance of doing it? Now, everybody got their own map. Know what that means? When I got a map, you got a map, everybody got a map, the court's going to have to draw the line. That's what's going to have to happen. And the whole thing is that you cannot have a chance for a black candidate to win unless you got the numbers played right. And what you put in here is a chance for us to lose both districts. I know it's not you. I'm not blaming you, President Pringle. I know there's a whole lot of maps out there. But the bottom line is that we got to do what we think is right. And I know in your mind, I've been knowing you a long time. I know you first came here. You know this ain't right. I mean, deep down in your heart, down in the carcass of your soul, you know it's not a good map that you presented. And that you're not presenting it anyway, because I guess the Senate going to act a fool and get the Senate. We got some senators going crazy up there now about something crazy. I don't know what they're doing upstairs, but the idea about the whole thing is that we got to try to present a map that the court won't have to redraw. And I'm asking you one serious question. Do in your good mind, knowing I know what you're going to answer, but do you think the court's going to approve the map that you showing now?
In my heart of hearts, I believe this is the best opportunity we have to get the state to approve a map. Yes.
And you, in your heart, hey, you believe the Supreme Court, the court's going to approve this map. When they specifically said they want a map that will allow at least two minority or black, I don't use the word minority, two black folks to be elected. Now, if you're going to give it a map that has a slider down, you and I both know that's not going to happen. Now, I done fell off the truck. I fell off the truck last night, but I got back on it this morning. This ain't going to happen. And I am for sure, when they look at this map, they're going to laugh at us. And you know it too. I've been knowing you a long time. I know in your heart, I don't know your heart, but I don't think the speaker even know this, that they're not going to accept this map. Hey, I might be going to get this to Sam Jones over there to write his name on it right now. Sam Jones wouldn't sign for this map. I know Sam Jones wouldn't. And y'all from the same area. Dr. Jones told me this map was crazy before I walked in the hall today. He said, this map is crazy, John. You right, Dr. Jones. It's crazier than Bessie Boy ever had a dream. So what I'm asking you and everybody in the house who ain't listening, they don't care. Nobody don't care because they got their marching order. The marching order is that we'll let them go in there and do what they're going to do, but then we'll shut them down. That's a marching order. But I'm telling you right now, it's a lesson in futility. I tell you what, we've been $1,000. I've been $10,001. They won't approve your map. I put my money on the table right here. And for every $10, $1 you put, I put up 10. And if I win, you pay off. But I guarantee you this map will not see the light of day. That's not positive. So all I'm asking everybody to do is just do the right thing and let's get out of here and do it right. Now, we got a crazy Senate. The Senate going crazy too. I mean, we ain't going crazy in the House by ourselves. The Senate going crazy. They presenting maps we ain't never seen before. I say they're drawing maps out the back of their back pocket. I say everybody got a map, they put it, I got a map too. But all I'm asking you is that let's at least try to pass a map that can stand the muster of the courts. Let's show the public one time that Alabama has the grit and the fortitude to do what's right. I mean, there's a joke going around that if we can play with them a little bit, we might take Terry Sewell's seat. I've been reading the paper. I mean, we got a lot of parties that we might get 2 white districts out of this thing. They won't have one. They won't have not one black. And that can happen with this way the map is drawn. And I know it can, and you know it can. But you got to do your job. One thing I can say for you: when you get a job, you do it. You go do the job. I know you go do, and you doing your job. And I know as well as standing here, what's going to happen before it's over with. You get every black to vote the right map, and then y'all march, y'all gonna vote the other map. And then we're gonna go to the courts, and the court's gonna redraw the right map. You and I know this, that this is in futility what we're doing right now. It's not going to work. The smoke and mirrors is not going to work. And everybody sitting here know it's not going to work. So why we exercising futility trying to do something we know ain't going to work? Nobody wants to hear it, but they already know what they got to vote for. That's why everybody can laugh and talk and play checkers here today. But they got their march on what they're going to do. But I'm begging y'all, please, for one time, Alabama, do what's right. Try to find a way deep down in the caucus of your soul to find out we got to do it right one time, because it's not going to happen. It's pretty good. They led orders to us to do the thing right, but hell, Alabama don't care. We do what we want to do. Send to them what we want to send to them. It ain't going to work. And you know it, and I know it. And I'll be glad when I go back to the elders of the court and Grand Master draw the map, because he will draw it fair. Then you have a chance to get 2 black districts. But with this drawing here, you might not get 1. You got a map right here, you might not get 1 district, 1 black district in it. You know that. I know it, and John Q. Public know it. So why don't, for one time in the history of the state, we do the right thing? Find in the caucus of your whole soul, your heart. Let's do it right and make sure we got a fair map and send it back to them. Hey, I'll preach to the choir. I know in your heart, deep down in your shoe, your size, you wear 8.5, 9 shoe. 10. Down in 10, the caucus of your shoe. Speaker know what I'm talking about too. Down in his shoe size, he know this map ain't gonna work. He know good and well the time to get to the Prince Speaker, they're going to turn down. And when they turn down, we're going to say, well, we tried to tell them. Why can't Alabama, for once in his life, won't do a lottery? Why can't we do right what the folks told us to do? All I'm begging to put you in the house, don't follow the old age-old rule, do what you want to do. Do what's right. They gave you the guidelines to do what's right, but we ignore the guidelines. So I'm begging you. Find it in your soul, your heart, or down in your foot size, or whatever you want to find it at, and do it right. We can say one time that Alabama did it right, it voted right. Not that I know what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen. Well, y'all let us talk a while, and we might get gathered down, and we might let us go through the process, but in the end, this stupid, crazy map that has no chance.
And the gentleman's time has expired. Chair recognizes Lady from Calhoun, Representative Boyd.
Thank you. Now just do the right thing.
I'd like to thank the gentleman from Jefferson County for such an impassioned speech. I just wish he was in favor of my bill. But, you know, on August the 14th, everybody talks about the Supreme Court, but on August the 14th, we go to court in Birmingham in front of 3 federal judges who are going to decide the fate of this bill. They will decide it sometime in August. I'm not sure if it's going to be, but I will tell you that I will proudly present this bill, this map to the court, because I think this bill complies with the state's VRA obligations. I've proven in the past that I will follow the Voting Rights Act. Many of you who were here last quadrennium remember I did the right thing. I drew a map that put one of our Republican colleagues out of this chamber because it was the right thing to do. I drew a majority-minority map against one of my own members, and that district elected a white person. I can't control who the Democrats elect. I can give them the opportunity. Start
Thank
the
you,
time back.
Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I can't concentrate up here unless whether you agree with me or not, you do need to give me the respect to listen. We can't even hear in here. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I come not today to talk about Republicans nor Democrats. May I repeat it? I'm not here at this microphone to talk about Republicans versus Democrats. I'm here to talk about fairness, a timeline, and a process. I don't know where you're going, Representative Kringle, but I think you need to come back because you're going to be there for a while to answer my questions.
One of your colleagues was talking about it.
When was this map drawn, Representative?
It was finished. We put the final touches on it after the last public hearing. I could not reduce the map or finish a map until I completed taking input from the public at our public hearings.
Okay.
And
When
as soon
was
as
it?
was done, we released it on Friday after we finished it immediately to members of the reapportionment committee.
All right, in the committee, and we are on the committee, there was a lot of talk made of the timelines and the shortness of the timeline. Now, for the public interest, those who did not know, what kind of timeline or situation does this put on giving the public the opportunity to have had input?
The federal court originally gave us, I believe it was only 3 weeks to do this. We went to the court and we asked for a stay to give us until the 21st of July so that we could go through the process of listening to the public, having public input, public hearings, so we could see what the public wanted and assess the situation and come up with a plan.
Do you believe that we should have started earlier and that we should have been discussing this map by our second public hearing, not after? What's your...
Again, explain to me how I can produce a map without taking public input. If I put a map out before I finish my public input, then you would attack me for not listening to the public and just doing whatever I wanted to. See, the beauty, you get to do either way. Either I can listen to the public or I can produce a map and ignore the public. I chose to listen to the public. And when that portion of was done, then we put the final touches on this map and released it.
Do you believe that we should have adopted the guidelines at the first public hearing?
We put them out, and you and some of your colleagues objected to them because y'all wanted to read them and make amendments to it. So we waited till the second meeting so y'all would have additional time because they were sent out before the meeting, and y'all wanted to make an amendment to them in the second meeting. So we had to wait till the second meeting because of y'all's attempted to amend them.
Okay, I came to talk about facts. We went into this process knowing what? What was the objective? What did the code say we must do?
I'm waiting. Please tell me.
You're not concentrating. What was, come on, let's slow down now. Come on now. You know what background I come from, and I'm not trying to teach. I'm trying to just present facts. All right. We went into this process knowing what? What did the courts task us to do?
Again, I read verbatim yesterday. I don't have it with me today, but I read verbatim yesterday. The court said we either have to produce another majority-minority district or a district that provides a protected class of citizens for electing a candidate of their choice. It's either a minority district or an opportunity district.
Do you believe that this map that we have is close to far away or where from what the coach expected us to do. My previous speaker, I think, explained it, but I want you to reiterate it for me so everybody in here can understand what timeline we were focusing on.
I don't believe I understand your question. I'm sorry.
This map, sir, do you believe that is close to majority, minority in the 2nd district, to make it specific?
I believe this district fulfills our obligation under the Voting Rights Act, yes.
In committee, and we had a lot of maps in front of us. I think 10 plus. Should there not been sufficient time for dialogue? As I say, I'm not here, Democrat nor Republican. I'm here for fairness as a task was given to us and how we approach it as a committee. Are you listening to me?
Yes, ma'am. Are you asking me about the length of time we spent? Did I not bring every single map up in front of the committee, put it on the screen and in front of public, and ask every member of the committee on multiple times if they had any more comments or anything they'd like to discuss on the map as it was up there? Every single map I went through, and I gave you the opportunity to ask unlimited questions, unlimited amount of time to talk about every single map.
You know, as I stand here, I know deep within my soul, we came in together. I've been here a long time. I've seen a lot. We have to do what we have to do. But Representative Pringle, my question earlier was, and you explained why we couldn't adopt these at the first meeting. But I think if you go back to my question for District 2, Congressional District 2, does it fit in any way according to what our task was assigned for us to do?
I believe this map complies with the state's obligations under the Voting Rights Act. Yes, ma'am.
Representative Pringle, you are dodging the issue and answering the questions. These are things that you and I, and for the public who are here, things that we did in committee to prepare for where we're standing now. This map was thrown in to us when? At the end. And it's on the extreme end of the spectrum. What's your opinion? Am I right?
I believe this map complies with the state's obligations under the Voting Rights Act. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let's move on to the timeline for the public.
Time.
In November of 2021, we did the original legal file. These are for the public information and for you to respond when I finish. In January 2022, the state requested for a stay in the federal courts. Who made that request?
I believe it was the Attorney General.
Thank you very much. Moving on.
The lady's time has expired.
I can't believe my time has expired.
I know,
But
I've enjoyed
if I must summarize, I respect you, Miss.
If you got it, listen, Dr. Boyd, if you got a comment, if you want to go ahead and finish it, because he took a little bit of your time starting out, so.
Thank you so much. To God be the glory. We're here. We are here for what is right. Not Democratic, not Republican. I've been around a long time. This is my state. I love it. But to God be the glory that we examine our hearts today and stand up. As my grandmother used to say to me, if you don't stand for something, you will fall for what? Anything. And to God be the glory that we do the right thing one time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Doc.
Thank you, Dr. Boyd.
Chair recognizes a gentleman from Tuscaloosa, Representative England.
Thank you for the recognition. Good morning, Pro Tem Pringle. You know, I've got some things that I need to accomplish. But first and foremost, I can't not correct a couple of things. I do serve on the reapportionment committee, and I just find it very ironic that when we were there was an opportunity plan on the agenda that no one represented was created by anybody on the committee. It was told to us that it was a plan that was generated off the internet, and then magically it becomes Livingston's plan in the Senate. Who knew? Also, I want to also correct the record on something else. You mentioned that the reason we didn't adopt the guidelines at the first meeting was because we said we wanted to read them. That's absolutely not correct. We were told before we started that we weren't going to adopt the guidelines until the next meeting. And I asked you after that specifically, well, since we're not going to do that to the next meeting, can I just, if there were any amendments, can I submit them in writing? And you said yes. So there was never any indication by any Democratic minority member of that committee that we wanted to delay the adoption. We were told that was going to happen. So just wanted to correct those two things.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah.
The opportunity plan, I've subsequently found out, was emailed in by a political consultant named Chris Brown.
We'll talk about that later. But again, I just want you to know that the way that the opportunity plan made its way through the committee also shielded it from public scrutiny, just like the community of interest plan that you're hearing that we're talking about today was also shielded from public scrutiny because it wasn't given to or adopted by the public until after the public hearings. So
I was taking input from the public. No other person drawing a plan had to take input from the public. I was the only person drafting plan that had to
actually, I need to correct that as well, because the plan that I'm going to offer to the body today actually withstood public scrutiny on several occasions. It was actually submitted well before the first public hearing, and it was actually vetted in both public hearings by both Republicans and Democrats and the community at large. The only plan that was adopted was the one that wasn't subject to public scrutiny at all. And actually, amazingly, by magic, both plans, the one that's going through the Senate, the opportunity plan, and the community of interest plan, managed to somehow avoid public scrutiny altogether.
I don't believe there was any public input into the plans that were sent in. They were drawn off campus. They were drawn somewhere else. I had no input into the plans that came in over the internet. My plan is the only one that the public...
I take that. Actually, you did have input into that plan because ultimately you supporting this plan eliminated any other plans from consideration.
But I still had to have input before I could produce. The plaintiffs are blessed with, they can go anywhere in the United States and draw a plan and then just submit it. They don't have to take input from the public. You know, now, granted, we did bring it up. We were willing to talk about them, and I'll be glad to talk about any plan that's been submitted.
And again, honestly, I just wanted to make sure everybody understands that the opportunity plan that was not vetted and was told to us on the committee that it was just submitted on the internet turned into the Senate plan.
I had no control over that plan. I had no input into that plan, and I did not see it before it was released.
Well, Mr. Speaker, could you? All right, I only have a few minutes to do this, but we have an historic opportunity in front of us today. We are back in the district court, and there's an opportunity in front of us for us to actually adopt a map that we all agree on, that comes directly from the plaintiffs, has withstood public scrutiny, has had the opportunity for public input on, and also mirrors many of the plans that were submitted to the court that the court themselves said were sufficient. And I will read to you, because I'm going to offer, because we've got a new system here, so we don't have to do substitutes anymore. We can just do amendments to plans. And I plan on offering an amendment to your bill. So instead of it being identified and labeled as the Pringle Congressional Plan, it will be known as the Figures Congressional Plan. And let me describe this plan for you. This map that I'm going to offer for you complies with both the court's order and it complies with Section 2. The federal court order called for 2 districts that provide Black voters an opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. Compliance with Section 2 is a fact-specific endeavor that requires analysis of the level of racially polarized voting in the state, a requirement component of the Gingles test recently affirmed by the United States Supreme Court in Allegan versus Milligan. The racially polarized voting analysis has demonstrated that for Black voters in Alabama to have the opportunity to elect their candidates of choice, districts over 50% Black voting age population or something close to it is required. As an aside, the map that you're currently proposing is at 42%, and considering that racially polarized voting occurs in Alabama, a map that you're proposing that puts it at 42% will likely be unable to achieve the desired objective of the district court. Additionally, maps that don't create majority Black districts are not likely to be compliant with the court's order because they are not likely to effectively create opportunities for Black voters to elect their candidates of choice. I want to also stress that the map itself that I'm discussing with you, while not a constitutional directive to keep counties whole at the congressional level, this map abided by the legislature's apparently preference to do so. This plan leaves largely counties whole where they do not need to change. Thus, the 2 northern districts follow essentially the same footprint as the existing map. And where there are changes in the area from Jefferson County to Mobile County, the changes are necessary to achieve the goals set by the court. No other map, including the one that you're presenting, contains 2 majority Black districts that achieves this close adherence to the state's existing policies. Much has also been said about dividing Mobile between Congressional District 2 and Congressional District 7. While that apparently is not a principle that is necessary to be followed when drawing school maps or school board maps, keeping the Gulf counties together has apparently been a driving consideration of other maps. It is important to note 2 things about that. The argument for keeping the Gulf counties whole and together at the expense of the Black Belt was squarely presented as a justification for the state's previous illegal map, and the court roundly rejected that claim. Even while both might be communities of interest, even important ones, maintaining the Black Belt was more necessary to making a second Black majority district, which was required by the Voting Rights Act. In addition, the configuration selected by the plaintiffs in CD2 very closely mirrors the existing map that the legislature has approved for the State Board of Education district, where part of Mobile County is in a district that stretches all the way to Montgomery County. And I've heard several allusions to racial gerrymandering, and that claim is odd to me because the state of Alabama has been found consistently over the last several years to violating that principle. In 2017, for example, the state was rebuked for setting specific quotas on the Black percentages in certain legislative districts. That kind of fixation on racial figures without supporting data is the opposite of how the plaintiffs in this case arrived at this map that I'm going to offer. They said,
Could you explain that to me one more time? Go back and explain it.
since 2017,
Yeah.
the state has been rebuked on several occasions for its usage of race in determining how maps are drawn. So,
And we should not rely on
No.
race to draw. What did they say in 17?
what we're talking about here is abiding by the Voting Rights Act. So when you do what's necessary, splitting counties.
Gentleman's time has expired.
So at this time, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to offer an amendment that.
Is it amendment or a substitute?
It's an amendment because we've changed the system. Now all I'm offering is to change the Pringle congressional plan to the Figures congressional plan.
So it's not changing the map, it's just changing the name.
That changes the map. Because we don't do meets and bounds.
He's changing from the Communities of Interest Plan to the VRA Plaintiffs Remedial Map.
So it'd be a substitute, right?
So
I got you.
So all we're doing is replacing on line 29 on page 2 the following, striking through Pringle congressional plan and changing it to the Figures congressional plan.
Which is the VRA map.
Clerk, see the amendment.
Amendment to House Bill number 5 by Representative England.
Again, like I said before, this offers the state of Alabama the historic opportunity to do the right thing, agree on a map that will satisfy the court's order and the VRA, and put us in a position to move forward as a whole body. So with that, I offer the amendment.
Mr. Pro Tem.
Ladies and gentlemen, this map also splits the Black Belt into 2 different legislative congressional districts, just like mine does. This has several racial gerrymanders where they're clearly going into counties and extracting the African Americans out of that county to move them into another county in order to achieve a racial goal. And I think it will draw additional litigation on a racial gerrymander. And with that, I move to table.
You've heard the gentleman's request is to table the amendment. Clerk will unlock machines and the members will vote. Clerk will lock machine, record the vote, 73 ayes, 27 nays, the amendment has been tabled.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members.
Thank you, gentlemen. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Madison, Representative Daniels.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. Mr. Pro Tem Pringle, I have a number of questions and statements as we go through this process. And so I noticed yesterday during the committee hearing, you mentioned various individuals that had input in crafting and drawing this particular map. The communities, the non-community of interest map. And so if you will kind of tell me exactly who was involved in that process within the state of Alabama, and if in fact there were individuals outside of the state of Alabama that was involved in the process of drawing those particular maps, this particular map.
We use the same demographer that has been used since the 90s. His name is Randy Henneman.
Okay. And so is Randy the only person that had really input in drawing the maps? And if so,
we had lawyers from the Attorney General's office and the legal counsel for the committee giving us legal advice.
Now, I noticed from the Attorney General's office that were some, dollars spent on outside guidance on these in this process. Is that true or no?
I don't know who the Attorney General's hired.
Okay. So you really don't know whether or not someone outside of the state had involvement in this process?
Well, I know we did because we received maps from out of state.
You said what now?
We received maps from out of state, but this map.
This particular map, you're saying that the Attorney General's office was involved?
I think there is a person that does performance analysis that lives in another state, but I do not know him.
And so you really don't
never
know
seen the
whether or
person.
not someone from outside of the state was involved in this process. You don't know who the Attorney General's office engaged, basically, but you have no knowledge of, that you didn't use anyone from outside of the state of Alabama in drawing this map. Is that correct?
No, there's an expert, and I don't know where the expert lives,
Okay.
that does a performance analysis on all the maps and tells us how they'll perform in elections.
And I recall us having this discussion last time when we were dealing with redistricting, and where we clearly mentioned to you that these congressional districts were going to be challenged and they were going to be found unconstitutional. Do you recall that conversation?
You've told me that since I've been here.
And it's actually happened the way I've told you every time.
Well,
and this is no different. And so I guess for me, when you look at communities of interest, can you define for me, when you're talking about communities of interest, define that for me. Are we talking about communities that are similar? We're talking about communities, or we're talking about the capacity of whether they're rural or urban, the racial makeup of those communities, the assets in those communities. When we talk about communities of interest, what are we zeroing in on based upon what you've been guided?
Unfortunately, I have never seen a definition of community of interest from the Supreme Court.
Okay.
I don't know what the court expects on the community of interest.
But your map is called community of interest. So where did that name come from?
I believe it maintains communities of interest in the.
So do you think Dallas County and Henry counties are communities of interest?
I'm sorry.
And I noticed yesterday your comments that I had to chuckle at. You said because the road connects them. But I don't think that qualifies for a community of interest.
Well, I mean,
connecting communities possibly.
Oh, a second. There's a definite. I'm looking for a definition.
Yeah, on page 13, the slip opinion.
Of the court opinion or the guidelines?
The court's opinion.
Districts shall respect communities of interest, neighborhoods, and political subdivisions to the extent practicable and in compliance with paragraphs through A. A community of interest is defined as an area with recognized similarities of interest, including but not limited to ethnic, racial, economic, tribal, social, geographic, or historical identities. The term communities of interest may in certain circumstances include political subdivisions such as counties, voting precincts, municipalities, tribal lands and reservations, or school districts. The discernment, weighing, and balancing of the varied factors that contribute to communities of interest is an intensely political process best carried out by elected representatives of the people.
Okay, so as I point out, Henry County and Dallas County, so help me understand, define for me how those two communities are communities of interest.
Which county again now?
Dallas and Henry.
Well, in the VRA map, you go from Washington County all the way into Henry County. Also.
But the question is communities of interest. An argument can be made that even in Mobile County and Dallas County, or Mobile and Montgomery, or Mobile and other places in the Black Belt, that a lot of the families and extended families originated from those particular communities. So are they not communities of interest at that point? Because you said racial, ethnic, you talked about poverty, you talked about all these other things that's defined as the communities of interest.
Exactly. Communities of interest.
And the Supreme Court also defined communities of interest, especially in that contains high proportion of Black voters, concentrated poverty, unequal access to government services, lack of adequate health care. And so there are a number of things that defines communities of interest that when I look at this map and I look at various counties within this map, I don't necessarily see a cohesion of communities of interest. And so you can very well, the argument can be made that this map, especially District 2, doesn't incorporate communities of interest. Now, I could say that Bullock County and Barbara County and Dallas County and Lowndes counties are communities of interest. I could say that Montgomery County is a community of interest. But Henry County is that's reaching. And I can even say Pike County can be a community of interest with Montgomery and or some other areas of the Black Belt. And so I don't necessarily see communities of interest in District 2. And so here again, we've drawn a map that I believe, I'm certain that won't be sufficient for the courts. And when you look at, as someone pointed out earlier, when you look at an African-American community or the Black community being able to elect their candidate of choice, if any group of people are going to be able to elect their candidate of choice, they will have to be the majority, right? But demographically in District 2, the numbers are at 42%. That is not a majority.
Again, you know, in the last reapportionment, I drew a majority minority district, and they chose to elect a white person. Just because you put the percentages there doesn't mean they're going to respond.
But my definition of majority, but the community, yes, they can elect whoever they want.
Exactly.
It's communities.
And my argument is
candidate of choice. It doesn't matter what color that person is.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
and my district allows them to elect the candidate of their choice. It gives them the opportunity.
They can elect the nominee in many instances based upon voting patterns, as you mentioned yesterday in the committee hearing. A nominee is not electing someone. You're electing someone in a primary. A nominee is not an elected official. They don't make it to the elected part. And then the other piece to this is that we gotta look at these what we're drawing, and what we've drawn here today. I do think that this is a lot better than the original map that was proposed before, right? But I think that this particular map also has a number of issues cracking, as well as not bringing communities of interest together. And so I think that you can arrive at a minority or majority African-American map without actually having to, because there are a lot of splits in this map. How many splits do you have in this particular, in District 2?
And there are 6 splits overall on the whole map.
How many precinct splits?
I couldn't answer that right now. I'm sorry.
Is it about 60?
And the gentleman's time has expired. The chair would like to recognize Representative A.J. McCampbell and Bolton for a moment of personal privilege. And while they're making their way down here, would also like to recognize the citizens of Pickens County concerned about health care, the adolescents mental health facility. Representative McCampbell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition and for your indulgence in this matter. That is a very serious concern for the people over in Pickens County, Alabama, which is a Black Belt county. Mr. Speaker, like most people in rural Alabama, we deal with health care issues. We are seeing people dying in our streets. And we have had, I dropped a bill in this session, understanding that this is a special session and it's a call by the governor for bills to be heard. But I thought it was important that the people Ron and I represent over in Pickens County understand that we are now fighting to make sure we won't have any people dying in the streets again. Right now, if someone falls ill and needs to go to a hospital, whether you go north, south, east, or west, it's a 1-hour trip. We have one ambulance that is actually, we have people working it. We may have 2 ambulances, but we need more bodies that are able to work it. So with that, Mr. Speaker, we are actually going to have a bill come next year, my colleagues. And all of those that are dealing with rural healthcare issues are probably need to talk to your people and actually look at how can we move rural healthcare in Alabama. I'm going to turn it over to Ron and let Ron talk a little bit more about this, but this is we talk about black and white, rich and poor. We talk about Democrat and Republican. This is a human healthcare, human being issue. This is not about any politics, so please don't even think that that's what this is about. It's about fairness for all people. We have people that live in rural areas, and they too need affordable, accessible health care. Ron?
Thank you, AJ. And when AJ mentions people dying in the streets, that's exactly what we've got in our Pickens County area. We've had 2 people die in the street in the past few months while they were awaiting health care. And one of these ladies was actually at a building right next to our hospital, which is now closed down. Now, our goal is to bring these facilities back up to offer emergency health care and stabilization services to go back out into the communities and the rural communities where people can get health care and then be transported to a larger place if necessary. But the inability to get people treated in emergency situations is critical in the state of Alabama, and especially in Pickens County. Now, we also plan to try to provide adolescent mental health care facility needs and satisfy those at our facility also. But the bottom line is we've got to start a statewide movement, and we're starting it in Pickens County to get our rural communities emergency health care back.
So my colleagues that are in the rural areas, join the movement. Mr. Speaker, you're in a rural area. Your healthcare system needs help. I had another colleague come up to me yesterday asking about that particular bill, and I'm going to share it so that all of us can be on one accord in terms of trying to get the people that sent us down here, that we say we represent. It doesn't matter the color, it doesn't matter who you are. If you have put enough trust in me to come down here and advocate for you, then Ron and I are committed to do it in Pickens County, and I want all my colleagues around here to be committed to do what you need to do for the people that trust you. So thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the indulgence in that time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair, thanks to gentlemen. Thanks for your time. Certainly appreciate your guests being with us today. Let's give the people of Pickens County a big hand. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Mobile, Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the recognition. The gentleman yield.
Yes.
Representative Pringle, I want to talk a little bit about the process we went through to get where we are today. I think I may have asked a number of questions in committee meeting about the process and about how we arrived to where we are. And I was really concerned about that. Of what's been presented here today, we've had the plan that you're presenting here, the VRA plan, we already also took a vote on it. Of the plans that we know of that's come before the House, which one of those plans was subject to a public hearing?
All of them, because this plan is a derivative of what we learned in the public hearings.
No, sir. No, sir.
No,
The public, when we had our public hearing, that plan was never heard at the public hearing because it was introduced the day after.
Exactly, because we're going through the process of taking input from the public.
So how
we can
did the
develop a
public get a
plan.
chance to ask questions?
They asked, we took what was said about the other plans, we listened to what the public told us, and we developed this plan that we think complies with the VRA.
Our first meeting, when the public got a chance to give their input, that plan wasn't even on the agenda. It wasn't on the agenda. This is your agenda.
Yes.
It does not have this plan on it
Exactly,
at all.
because we were taking input from the public as to what they wanted, so we could draw a plan.
Kind of could serve some of my time. You take. I'm gonna ask you enough questions where you get a chance to talk. Believe me, before I sit down, you have. The other thing that I want to point out is that, and I know it's just a matter of sometimes habit, but both in the committee meeting and in here, we've used this term, us and y'all. I wish we'd get away from that, because I hope that hadn't spilled over into how we draw plans, us and y'all, because that's not what it's all about. You know that, and I know that. And as I said, it's probably a matter of speech, but it really doesn't sound that way all the time. And I just wanted to point that out. I asked you in the...
When I use that term, y'all, I meant what the public had given to us and what the public was telling us. I said what y'all have given us, and it was not anything other than what we were receiving from the public.
Well, I think you mentioned the Representative Boyd, y'all plan. I mean, I don't know who y'all is, but...
The plaintiffs?
I'm not the plaintiff. Okay. The other thing that I asked in the committee was, I asked several times, were the plans vetted by our attorney, by the committee attorney? Because I kept hearing you saying, when people would ask questions, you say, I'm not an attorney. And my response was, we got an attorney hired here. What is his position? Well, I don't know how, but he disappeared. I hadn't seen him since in the process. But was this plan vetted by the committee attorney for compliance with the Voting Rights Act?
I discussed this plan. You know, I have an attorney privilege with him, and yes, I discussed it with him.
Okay. What was his position?
That's going to be. He and I agree that this plan complies with the state's obligation under the Voting Rights Act.
Okay. So he's on record as saying that his opinion is this complies with the Voting Rights Act.
He and I believe this is the best plan we could come up with.
I'm talking about him now, not you. What is his position? That's the position I'm looking for.
Right. He and I agree that this is the best plan we could come up with to comply with the Voting Rights Act.
Can you just for a second, you separate he and I?
Well,
just said he. What was his position?
We agree that this is the best plan we have for the Voting Rights Act compliance.
Okay. Okay. As far as this plan is concerned, when asked, you said that you waited until you heard all the comments to draft this plan.
To finish
drafting this plan.
To finish.
Okay. Why didn't everybody else have the same privilege doing it? Because they had to present their plans for us to even meet on.
Because other people drawing plans didn't have to take public input.
You took input on their plan. That's what the public hearing was about.
But when they drew it, and they drew it without public input and then presented it to the public.
And when they came in, the public got a chance to give input.
Exactly.
When did the public get input on yours?
When we brought it up for the committee, but I couldn't finish the plan until after I'd gotten public input.
But when you brought it back to the committee, the public couldn't answer any questions about it.
If I put a plan out before I finished my public hearings, what would you say?
I didn't know you were gonna put one out, quite frankly.
Yeah, well, the committee.
I thought we were gonna put one out. I didn't know you were gonna put one out. I thought the committee was gonna put one out.
You're trying to put the cart before the horse. I had to take input from the public before we could finalize a plan.
Well, there were 90 or 100 plans.
I couldn't answer that question.
Who decided what plans would go before the committee and what process would you do that?
Given the time constraints we were under because of the shortened period of time we have and the issues we have with computers in the reapportionment office, we took what we considered the plaintiff's plans and that represented the best representation we could of what was available to us.
Would just again, define we for me. Who is we? I thought I was part of we. I'm on the committee.
Again, it's one of those, there was a very compressed amount of time. They came in on Friday night, and Monday we had to have a committee meeting.
Well, can you tell us who that consisted of? That consisted of you, I guess the vice chair, and who else?
The co-chair.
You and the co-chair and
The
who
co-chair,
else?
the committee clerk, and our demographer.
Okay, so no other members of the committee, just the two of you.
We had to move fast. The deadline was Friday night, and we had to have a meeting.
That just requires a yes or a no, nobody else but you and him.
Well, I mean, it's a time constraint.
I didn't ask why, I asked who.
Well, you got a why answer.
Okay, you didn't attend now, so I understand. We are at a point, as been said earlier, where we had an opportunity to put together a plan that could be agreed upon, that this body could approve, and we wouldn't have to depend on someone else doing it for us because they don't think that we can draw one without using considerations that's not a part of the Voting Rights Act. And I was really optimistic when we started that we probably could do that. And as we moved forward with it, and as I saw some of the process that was not transparent, then I really kind of changed my position on what we'd be able to do. And the reason for that is that this is the same thing that's been done over the years. You know, we put together a plan, I guess, and sent it through the courts, or it got in the courts. And I'm sure we thought it complied. I would hope we did when we sent it up there. It didn't. It didn't. And we are headed down the same road. Now, we're looking at another plan that's been vetted, been through public hearings, has been seen by the court already. It has been a plan that really gives an opportunity for minorities to participate in at least 2 districts at a level where it's realistic.
Let me stop you. The VRA plan was not presented to the court. It came after the court case. So the VRA plan was not before the court. Some variations of it were before the court, but that plan was not before the court.
Okay, well, what variations of your plan were before the court?
The one that they overturned.
The one that overturned. That's my point. You just made my point for me. That's the one that they returned, the one that you drew up. And you know, you've drawn a lot of districts. You've done a lot of work. I've been on the reapportionment committee all through the process, and you've drawn a lot of districts. The strange thing to me is you've drawn none of it like this. Nowhere else in the state until we got to these congressional districts. I mean, for instance, you know, whatever percentages you got or whatever numbers you have, would you consider that a real opportunity in your district?
The gentleman's time has expired. Thank you.
Yes.
The chair recognizes Representative Devan from
our
Jefferson
duty
County.
under the Voting Rights Act.
I simply rise today for those who are listening, who are streaming these, proceedings to simply speak to the best of my knowledge, facts. And the simple fact is that the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, on June 8th, ruled that the Alabama Supreme Court, that the legislature of Alabama, based upon the maps that were drawn in 2021, stood in violation of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, in that they had drawn lines that were not representative of the population of the state of Alabama, in that for every 1 in 4 residents in this state, they are Black. And that because of that, there should be another majority or an opportunity for another Black majority congressional district in the state of Alabama. This ruling came by way of a 5-4 decision. And out of that 5-4 decision, 2 of those justices were Republicans. Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Roberts. It was also determined that this legislature was to redraw these lines by the 21st day of June, and to redraw these lines with a map that would be representative of the people, that would represent the opportunities for 2 congressional districts. And what we have before us today are still maps, or a map that still is representative of 1 congressional district, that is representative of 1 Black congressional district, District 7. I simply say, and this is the soundbite for today, and I am unapologetic, that even in my legal career, whether it be criminal or civil, I have never seen a learned group of people who would outright, without any fear of contradiction, and I will, because I'm on this House floor, I will not say the word I want to say, but who would dare to blatantly flip off the United States Supreme Court and throw such a historic, monumental ruling in their face, and bring before the people, and to then submit to the court a map that is being presented today as a ruse, that has been presented with as many terms of arts that I've heard here today and in the last 24 to 48 hours. It is an embarrassment. And I didn't stand here to beg and grovel and ask and continue to ask all these questions that seem to be redundant and repetitive. But the question I'm asking, if not when, these maps still pack districts. These maps still are drawn in a way that it is still representative of someone saying that these places cannot be represented by Black folks, that District 2 cannot be touched, that District 6 cannot be touched, that the representatives of District 6 and District 2 are being protected, by our colleagues here in the House of Representatives. But I believe that when these maps go back and when they are presented and the arguments are made, I believe that the two learned special masters that have been already selected by the courts will do just as the United States Supreme Court, as well as the 3-panel judges that sit in our circuit here, would expect them to do, because they knew that we would not be responsible enough to represent the people of the state of Alabama in a way that we would obey the rule of law. The court said to create a minority district, a district that would be representative of a minority, getting close to 50%. I am embarrassed today. I was embarrassed yesterday. And I don't want anyone that is listening to be fooled by what you see here on this wall. It is a lie today. It was a lie when it was presented, and it will be a lie when we leave out of here and it is voted upon. And as I said, I can't say the word, but you all have basically dropped the F-bomb on the United States Supreme Court. And that is what you did here today and with this process. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
The chair thanks the lady. The chair recognizes Representative Hall from Madison County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's nice to say that word, Madam Speaker. Mr. Pringle, let's see. It was about a year it was only a year before I took office, 1992, that Alabama had its first Black representative in Congress since Reconstruction. Were you aware of that?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know who that was?
Earl Hilliard.
That's right, you're right. So do you know who the 3 persons were before him?
Pardon me?
Do you know the 3 congresspersons were before him?
In that district? I know Mr. Buchanan came out of that district, but.
Well, there were 3 African Americans. Yeah. My point is that up until during Reconstruction, you had Benjamin Turner, James Thomas Rapier, and Jeremiah Harrison were the 3 that had served prior to 1992 when Earl Hilliard was. And so after Earl Hilliard, you had
Arthur Davis, right? Wasn't it? Yes.
And then today we have Terry Sewell. So the idea of the candidate of choice has not always been. So I make that point to say from Reconstruction until Earl Hilliard, the candidate of choice wasn't always, not always in African Americans. Would you not agree? And you would agree with that, right?
I'm sorry, repeat it.
You know, tell them that you can do this without them texting you. He can do this without being texted. No, but I was saying, I gave you those individuals' name because, and one of the reasons I said that was because the candidate of choice, even if you mention Democrats, not always Black. All right? And that this is a testament of how much the damage past, how much our past, our racial past, that we have to undo. And that's what I think the court order was. It was part of helping us to undo some of that racial past that we are dealing with. Would you agree?
The court told us that we needed to comply with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
And so when we talk about a candidate of choice, you've also indicated that it would not have, it is not always black, right?
I'm not going to, I drew a majority-minority district and they elected a white man out.
Exactly. Exactly.
So they
point.
chose.
So the
with
candidate
majority.
of choice for Democrats was not always black, but it's a testament, as I said, about how damaged our past is as it relates to race. If you put it in the right context, if you look at history, if you look at the way things have happened. So it's not always black. When the candidate is black, when does it happen? When there is a black candidate, when does it usually happen?
You've lost me. I'm sorry.
Generally, it is generally there you would have what? A majority members of that district being what? Black. When you have a person that represents that particular district, isn't that generally what happens if you base and you look at historically what has happened? Isn't that what you see happening? And that is why we're at the position where we are today. History proves that. You can see that from history. Alabama has elected six U.S. congresspersons in the past 200 years. 6. And 3 of them were during Reconstruction. 2 of those came after. So here we are today, still fighting that cause is basically what I'm saying. So there were some comments yesterday when we look at the case, look at the bill that you've introduced, when we look at Milligan versus, the voting rights, the map that was provided for us, that map, when we look at that map, we felt, and based on what the court's opinion was, that map gave us 2 districts. And you're saying that the map that you're drawing is a better map than that map. Could you tell me why?
I'm saying that my map complies with the committee guidelines and my map complies with the Voting Rights Act and provides a second opportunity district. 1 majority minority and one opportunity districts for the minorities to elect a candidate of their choice.
But I'm saying, in light of the fact that I think Representative Moore may have shown us 4 different maps that VRA that came from the plaintiffs. And of those 4 maps, then there was one that was introduced, which we call the BRA map. And when you look at that map and look at this map, we're saying that we felt, or I'm saying, it would appear to me that the map that was drawn, that would have been the map of choice. And so that map would give us, it appeared that the opportunity was more actionable with that particular map.
But you also have to be very cautious when you're drawing maps that you don't engage in racial gerrymandering.
So
splitting communities along racial lines.
That is not what I'm speaking to. I'm speaking to the fact that we had a map that was drawn, several maps that would have represented very well what the court order indicated. But today we're looking at something different from what was drawn or indicated by the courts. And so help me to understand how this is a better map than what we saw.
Because the other maps have clear racial gerrymanders. They are drawing based solely on race and splitting counties based on race.
And so are you saying that it is your thoughts or your idea that those maps did not meet the guidelines?
I believe they have racial gerrymandered.
What you're saying is that those maps from the courts, that the courts gave.
The plaintiffs.
They did that.
The plaintiffs presented those maps. I'm not aware of the court endorsing those maps.
I didn't say that they endorsed them, but they were maps that was presented to show to the courts and present to them that these were some possibilities.
Did the court rule those maps were acceptable?
I didn't say that they did. Did I indicate that they, that, but I am saying, in my observation that we had those were the maps that were presented, that map was presented to us during the hearing. At least we had an opportunity to see that map and see what had been presented. And when you look at that, why wouldn't we want to be as close as possible, if not the map itself, in terms of presenting that as our meeting the requirements that the court ordered for us?
I believe those maps are racially gerrymandered.
And tell me, why do you think that's racial? In what way?
They split Houston County, I believe it's Montgomery County, and Mobile County clearly along racial lines.
Okay, and so in your map, did you split Mobile County?
No, I did not.
Why?
Because I consider Mobile and Baldwin County a community of interest.
And so, but when they split Mobile, split the counties, they were not, you didn't think they felt that they illustrated communities of interest?
I believe they split Mobile County almost solely along racial lines.
But community of interest portion was left out?
It was a racial gerrymander.
And so is there any other opportunity?
I'm sorry, the VRA also has a racial gerrymander in Jefferson County.
But you're talking about, you're saying that the racial gerrymandering and the reason is racial gerrymandering because specifically you only wanted to keep a county such as Mobile whole and Baldwin County.
As a community of interest.
And so that's not racial gerrymandering?
What?
Keeping Mobile County and Baldwin County whole?
That's a community of interest.
No, okay. So when it comes to community of interest versus the racial portion, remember I started out with the historical perspective. I thought I did.
The lady's time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank the lady. Chair recognizes the lady from Mobile, Representative Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, my fellow delegation member. How are you today? I don't think we got to greet each other at Rules Committee meeting. You made a quick exit out of there. You had somewhere to go.
A little pressing business.
Okay. Did you happen to notice, Representative Pringle, how often the High Court's opinion mentions Mobile?
No, ma'am, I did not. I'm sorry, I didn't notice it.
Okay, I mean, I know it's a long document, but it mentioned Bolden versus the city of Mobile quite a few times. And as I recall, Bolden, and I'm sure you recall as well, that Bolden versus Mobile was the case that eventually led to our change of government, city government in and it eventually led to us going from at-large, a 3-member at-large commission to a 7-member district.
The Zogby Act.
Thank you, commission and a mayor form of government. As I was looking through, and it's a hard document to read. I mean, it's long and it is difficult to read, but I found that on pages 32 and 33 of the Supreme Court's opinion, it states that history did not stop in 1960. And of course, it was referring to the voting rights struggles of the 1960s. And it states, as we have explained, Congress adopted the amended Section 2 in response to the 1980 decision, City of Mobile, which was, of course, our case about districting. Yesterday, I believe that during your brief discussion about a community of interest, you ask a member of the state government committee what Mobile and the Black Belt had in common. Did you not ask that question or some similar question?
I said, I asked when Mobile County was starting to be included in the Black Belt.
So during that exchange, I wanted to raise my hand and respond, but I doubt that, where is he? I doubt that Chairman Sales would have allowed me to speak since I'm not a member of the state government committee. I recall, however, that the Supreme Court's opinion noted, and I quote, and I really like this part, the district court concluded correctly under our precedent that it did not have to conduct a beauty contest between plaintiffs' maps and the state's maps. There would be a split community of interest in both, according to the court. And then also for the record, I'd like to note that the Supreme Court's opinion states that the district court understandably found testimony insufficient to sustain Alabama's overdrawn argument that there can be no legitimate reason to split the Gulf Coast region. The opinion states that even if the Gulf Coast does constitute a community of interest, moreover, the district court found that plaintiffs' maps would still be reasonably configured because they join together a different community of interest called the Black Belt. And as you stated in committee, a community of interest, according to our redistricting guidelines, is an area with recognized similarities of interest, including but not limited to ethnic, racial, economic, tribal, social, geographic, or historical identities. And I just want to say that I think it's safe to say that Mobile and the Black Belt have at least some of these similarities and ties. And I want to share a little story. I don't know if you recall that I owned and operated a small specialty bookstore in Mobile for about a dozen years or so. One of my stores, and I used to love to have book signings that would bring authors into the store to interact with my customers, with the readers. And one of my store's most successful book signings featured the late J.L. Chestnut. Did you ever have an opportunity?
A very distinguished attorney out of Selma, Alabama.
Yes, indeed. Yes. In fact, he was Selma's first Black attorney and a prominent civil rights attorney and figure in the civil rights movement. He wrote a book called Black in Selma, The Uncommon Life of J.L. Chestnut, Jr. As that title would suggest, it was an autobiography, and then it also chronicles the history of Selma's voting rights movement. At any rate, I was surprised and pleased, I might add, at the turnout at that book signing. I had no idea how many Mobile residents had ties to Selma. I knew Representative Drummond had ties to Selma, that her mother was from that area. But many of the people who came to that book signing were Mobile residents with strong ties to Selma. They came to meet J.L. Chestnut. Some of them knew him, most of them didn't. They all had heard of him, and they wanted to thank him for his contributions and to tell him who their relatives were in Selma. So there are definitely ties that bind Mobile and the Black Belt: ethnic, racial, social, cultural, and kinship ties, among others. A large part of Alabama's population is isolated when Mobile's Black population is left out of the Opportunity District. So I hope that that will not happen. That's why I supported the VRA remedial map. I think it satisfies the criteria the court laid out, follows all the traditional redistricting principles, and I only wish we could reconsider the VRA map that Representative England offered. Thank you.
Thank you. Are you a member of the Alabama Democratic Conference, ADC?
No, I don't think I am.
Okay, I'm just curious, because the chairman of the Baldwin County ADC agrees with me that Mobile and Baldwin should not be split. So the chairman of the Alabama Democratic Conference has stated on the record he does not believe Mobile and Baldwin County should be split up. So I'm just curious.
That's one person's opinion. Thank you, Representative Pringle.
Chair thanks the lady. Chair recognizes the lady from Mobile, Representative Drummond.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will my fellow Mobilian yield to me?
Gladly, to my friend and colleague.
I know that you've been up here a very, very long time, and I'm just going to pick up a little bit where Representative Clark left off at. But I really wanted to sort of pick up also at my colleague Wanda LeCavan, because this is really a slap in the face, not only to Black Alabamians, but to the Supreme Court. So I agree with her. But let me just pick up when I went to all of the public hearings, took my time, and I drove up here and I sat on the front row. I wasn't there just to make you smile, but I was there to actually take notes and make sure that I was informed about what was going on. And I sat there and I've been listening very intently back there. I looked at and listened to you talk about the opportunity map and then the community of interest map. And you had all of those on the agenda, am I not correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Never once did you release anything on the opportunity map. At least I didn't. I wasn't on the committee, but I sat there and I was waiting, and I've got a whole folder that I was collecting everybody's information.
Again, I did not know the opportunity map. It was emailed in.
Well, I didn't get anything on the community of interest map either.
Well, the community of interest.
And I remember intently because I laughed at this comment. Someone on the committee asked you, where did you get the information for that map? And you said, oh, it could have come from the internet or something. And we all burst into laughter.
The opportunity map was emailed in. I found out subsequently by a political consultant by the name of Chris Brown.
Well, let me bring in Mobile. I know that you have said that Mobile is not a community of interest, right? That's your assessment, right?
No, I said Mobile and Baldwin is a community of interest.
No. I beg to differ with you. We have more in common with the Black Belt than we do with Baldwin County. And I don't know why we keep lumping the two. Besides economic development, what are some of the other characteristics for minorities, Black folks that are in Mobile as it relates to Baldwin County? Baldwin County is a pretty affluent county. Mobile has pockets of poverty. Does the Black Belt not have pockets of poverty?
I couldn't answer that question. But again, I agree with the chairman of the ADC in Baldwin County.
I'm not going on just the Chamber of Commerce, because when you talk about us not having any community of interest, let me stand here as someone who has a mom who is from Dallas County. I will be up there for a family reunion. Also, my dad is from Livingston. I will be up there in August for a family reunion. Let me give you a little bit of the history of the migration of the Black Alabamian from the Black Belt. They usually gravitate to the hub of economic development. Wouldn't you agree?
I couldn't dispute that.
Is that not part of our interest? We have more, the interest of the neighborhoods that, as you said, that gerrymandered Black folks out of Mobile into their maps for the VRA maps. We have more in common with the Black Belt than we do with Baldwin County. Geographically, would you not agree? Where did those Black folks come from? Did they come from Baldwin County? Do they have a lineage from Baldwin County?
I believe many African Americans in Mobile County work in Baldwin County. Many African Americans.
They do not work from Baldwin County, Mr. Pringle. Come on now. Let me give you some geographics of Black folks, because I represent them. If you go back and talk with them, they have more ties with the Black Belt than they do with Baldwin County. Now, don't get me wrong, I like Baldwin County, but let's talk truth to truth. They have more in common with the Black Belt. When you look at the lack of health care in the minority community, even in Mobile County, that's a commonality with the Black Belt, not with Baldwin County. When you look at the concentrated poverty, they have more in common with the Black Belt, not with Baldwin County. I'm just trying to talk some truths here. Even the Supreme Court, as Representative Clark cited, even they said in their argument, in the Milligan versus Allen, they stated that they did not find that the state of Alabama's argument was persuasive as regarding Mobile County being split. They said we ought to be in this map. I don't think that is cherry picking or gerrymandering minorities. If you look at many of the minorities in Mobile County, they have more connections with the Black Belt. You're looking at one of them. My folks didn't come from Baldwin County. They came from Oroville in Dallas County, and they came from Livingston in Sumter County.
I've worked in both those cities.
And I'm telling you, my connection, and let me just give you a little bit of the history, and I started thinking about this last night. When I was a much younger girl, we had folks that lived in Oroville and Selma that went to Mobile County to work 5 days a week and came home on the weekends.
They traveled Highway 5, the old Birmingham Highway.
And now, even today, if you look at Highway 43, I dare, you've got Washington County, you say that's in the Black Belt. I dare to say we have more commonality with those counties that are in the Black Belt than we do Baldwin County. I like Baldwin County, love the beaches, love the folks over there. But let's talk about people. We have more commonality with the Black Belt. We have high poverty, which one day I hope we get rid of, but we got to speak truth to power. And when you look at the lack of health care in some of our areas, the commonalities are just too great. We are all community of interest to the Black Belt, not to Baldwin County. And a reason you stand here to say that they shouldn't be split is for economics. It's not about community of interest. Let's be truthful here. The court said so, the Supreme Court said so, and it's a truth. It's true. Were you raised in Baldwin County?
No, ma'am.
Where were you raised? Because see, I also know a lot of folks who are majority race individuals in Mobile County are also from areas up in the Black Belt. Is that not true?
I was born in Jefferson County and moved to Mobile when I was 3 months old.
Okay. See, I was born in Mobile County, but I go for a family reunion in Selma, Oroville, and Livingston. So I stand here to tell you today, when you say we don't have a community of interest with anybody but Baldwin County, I stand to tell you that is absolutely wrong. The court says so. And if you look at the interests of the two communities in Mobile County, the African Americans in Mobile County have more in common and interests with those that are in the Black Belt and not with Baldwin County. So that's what I stood to stand for. And I know I represent Mobile County, and I know some of our most notable Mobilians don't want to see the two split. But I want us to be fair. That's what the courts told us to do. And what we're doing here, see, I support the VRA map. When I looked at your map, I can't support that map, not only because it doesn't include Mobile, but it's not a truism of communities of interest. It is based on something that I've been sitting there trying to understand what it's based on. And it is a slap in the face to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, okay, Alabama, this is not a persuasive argument. It's time for us to do the right thing. I'm gonna leave a little bit of time for you.
If people were moving from Dallas County to Madison County, would that make Dallas and Madison County a community of interest? People move from Dallas County to Madison County. Does that make them a community of interest?
When I tell you I'm not moving, my folks are still there. I can name them one by one.
You know,
That are still in Selma, that are still in Oroville, that are still in Sumter. They're still there. You said yesterday a road made a community of interest.
And the
lady's
So I
time
give
has
you Highway
expired.
43.
And 5. But let me also point out.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Jefferson County,
Wait a minute.
Representative Tillman.
Mobile, the city of Mobile and Mobile County both gave a $10 million tax break to Airbus and Austal because so many of their employees that work at the major
Mr. Speaker.
employees.
Thank you.
Even though 40% of their employees
I
are
hear
in
you,
Baldwin
Mr.
County.
Pringle. I hear you. I hear you, but it's my time now. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All right. Good morning, Representative Pringle. So let me ask you a few questions. Earlier, you stated that we have to go back to court, or likelihood of going back to court on August 14th, correct?
We will go to the judges have set a hearing on August the 14th.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Do you know how we can prevent going back to court?
There is no way right now to prevent it.
Yes, there is.
No, there's not.
Is to pass the map that set forth that the court said in their requirements of their guidelines, all of the 11 maps that they passed, what they said was acceptable. If we were to just pass those maps, we can prevent going back to court if we were to do that, correct?
We have a court hearing on August the 14th, and we will not get out of it for any reason.
Right. Now, you also stated what the Supreme Court did in this particular hearing, correct? You also talked about the ruling in the Supreme Court, correct?
That they upheld the lower court ruling.
Okay,
yes.
and they upheld which court?
What?
Which court did they uphold?
The 3 federal judges in Birmingham.
The same court that we got to go back to on August 14th?
Exactly.
And the same court that heard all of the testimony, all of the evidence, all of the argument, the same court, correct?
Yes, the same three judges.
So what was at issue at that particular court?
That we violated Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
Which map were they talking about?
The original map this House passed in 2020.
Did you actually draw that map?
I was the chairman of the committee at the time, yes, sir.
You were the chairman of the committee at that time?
I was the co-chairman.
That drew the map that not only did the Supreme Court affirm, but the 3-court judge said violated the Section 2, correct?
Yes, sir.
So now you're drawing this map,
yes,
correct? And this map is going to do the same, likelihood would do the same ruling.
I believe this map fully complies with the Voting Rights Act. Yes, sir.
I know you've been stating gerrymandering, correct? You've been saying that a lot since we've been up here, racial gerrymandering, correct? So if that is your opinion?
Well, I mean, it's nobody's been able to explain to me the decision to break Mobile County, Jefferson County, and Houston County along racial lines to achieve an objective.
So in other words, we never received any type of legal ruling that those maps were racially gerrymandering according to you, correct?
I believe they will bring a racial gerrymandering challenge in court. Yes, sir.
Okay. So
if they are adopted, I believe they will bring a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And during the court hearing, the plaintiffs submitted several different maps, correct?
You know what now?
During a hearing in the 3-court panel, the plaintiffs in that case submitted several different maps, correct?
Yes, they did.
And the map that they submitted, the courts approved and said the likelihood that these maps will satisfy the requirements of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, correct?
I believe they ruled that the plan we passed violated Section 2.
Excuse me, repeat that.
I believe the courts ruled that the plan we passed in 2021 violated Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
That is correct. That is correct. So, but during that hearing, the plaintiffs submitted several different maps. The court also stated that each one of those maps could satisfy the requirements under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, as well as the Gingell's test, correct?
I believe that's correct, yes.
That is correct, right?
And I believe this map here satisfies.
No, not this
Section 2
map.
of the Voting
No,
Rights.
not this
This
map.
is my opinion. That
Yeah.
satisfies Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act and complies with the jingle.
Well, I'm glad that you cannot give a legal opinion. We're not talking about this particular map. We're not talking about this map. We're talking about the map that was submitted in court by the plaintiffs at that particular time. Correct? Those are the maps we're talking about, not Mr. Pringle map. Your map, original map, has already been discarded as violating Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, correct?
They ruled that it violated, yes.
Yes. So it's more than likely that this map submitted by you would also do the same if we were just looking at the probability of that happening, correct?
The court approved the maps showing the possibility of a violation. The court did not approve any single map as a remedy.
Okay.
They just said it showed a possible violation.
Yes, it's possible because the plaintiffs in the case filed a preliminary injunction, correct?
Yes.
So do you understand how that works?
I'm not an attorney, but I also know the plaintiffs in that suit also testified under oath that they thought a 40% BVAP district would suffice as an opportunity district for them.
And they also with testimony in that particular case that stated, even from the state's expert testimony, that they cannot approve or meet all of the standards in Gingles, correct?
I'm not aware of that.
Okay, well, it's a lengthy crowd, but that did occur. So let me ask you this. Will you agree that the state of Alabama will have multiple community of interest throughout the state?
Every state has multiple communities of interest.
So why this particular community of interest map are we trying to sell to the people?
Because we believe it complies with the Voting Rights Act.
It does what?
It complies with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
No, we would disagree with that. I believe that the VRA map complies and we endorse that particular map. So.
And I believe it has 3 unconstitutional racial gerrymanders.
Yes,
one in
but
Mobile,
again.
one in Houston and one in Jefferson.
But again, we're talking about racial gerrymandering. This is in your opinion, not a legal conclusion, not a legal opinion, not a legal ruling. This is your opinion, correct?
Exactly. I believe it's clearly a racial gerrymander.
And again, you was the author and you drafted the original map that was deemed to violate Section 2 of the Voters' Rights Act, correct?
You're getting two different, a Section 2 violation and a racial gerrymander.
I know they're two different, but again, this is your opinion. It's not a legal conclusion, though, correct?
If you're trying to remedy this by breaking this law.
Yes, I know, but that's your opinion, not a legal conclusion, correct?
Yes.
All right, so that's all I'm trying to get understanding to. Also, if we're looking at the long-standing history in the state of Alabama, when it comes to voting rights acts, when it comes to all of the ways that Black people in the state of Alabama have been prevented from voting, why in this particular opportunity that we have to actually get it right, why is there such resistance to that? To correct the wrongs of the past?
Well, no, both plans you're talking about break the Black Belt into 2 districts. My plan just keeps Mobile and Baldwin whole and avoids the racial gerrymanders the VRA district has. But both of them split the Black Belt.
Both of them speak to it. So in your opinion, what is the definition of a minority majority district?
The court told us we had to draw either a majority minority or a district that provides the minority the opportunity to elect a candidate they're choosing. And under the testimony of the plaintiffs, before the Supreme Court ruling, they said a 40% minority district would suffice as an opportunity district.
Okay, so a candidate of their choice.
A candidate of their choice at 40%, and I have data that proves...
Not 40%, we're not talking about percentages. We're saying a candidate of their choice, correct?
They said at 40% BVAP, they would satisfy being able to elect a candidate of their choice.
Okay, but we're not discussing percentages here. We're just saying for the minority majority to have the opportunity to elect a person of their choosing, a candidate of their choosing, not the percentages of it. So in that definition, tell me without the percentages, what does that mean to you? The minority majority district without the percentages.
What, a majority minority district?
Yes.
That would be over 50% BVAP.
It'd be a what?
Over 50% to be a majority minority would have to be over 50% BVAP.
Okay, correct. So,
But an opportunity district, the plaintiffs testified 40% would provide them the opportunity.
but we're not discussing the opportunity district. I'm asking you, and you just stated that it's over 50%, correct?
For a majority minority district, yes.
Okay, but that's what you just stated, right?
For a majority minority district, you have to have a BVAP over 50% minority.
Thank you.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Mobile, Representative Racy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With the gentleman here,
Yes, sir.
had the opportunity to review all of the public hearings and the committee meeting on yesterday. And so I've had the opportunity to pay a lot of attention to what's been going on. And one of the more disturbing things that I saw was so much information coming from the city of Mobile asking for the Mobile and the Baldwin area to stay together. And I really didn't get a good understanding of why they felt like that was so important, especially with the state school board coming down into Mobile County, which is also a map that you was partially responsible for, that was not challenged and that is standing up right now. So to see that, I didn't quite understand that. But one of the things I like to talk about today mostly is communities of interest, because that appears to be the tagline today as far as the map is concerned, how we kind of got to this point. Community of interest is saying that Mobile and Baldwin are communities of interest. I beg to differ, and I just like to explain some reasons why I beg to differ that today. So I want to acknowledge that both of my parents came from the Black Belt or Clark County and migrated to the Mobile Pritchard area. We were kind of in the Happy Hill over by the projects. My family, when they moved to Mobile, moved to the Josephine Allen projects over in Happy Hill. And it just makes me wonder, how exactly do you determine what a community of interest is? Do you consider economics, race, poverty, income? Are those any things that you consider when you determine the community of interest? It's just yes or no, because I got a lot to talk about. I don't want you to speak too much on my time.
There are just multiple criteria.
I'm saying, but would any of those be considered to be like poverty, race, income, economics?
There are just numerous criteria to recognize.
Wait, would any of those be considered?
I'm reading racial is one of them. Yes, sir.
Okay. So when I look at the median household income historically in the Black Belt, and that's what I'm gonna talk about first, the median household incomes in the Black Belt seem to have always been somewhere between 27 to 35,000. The city where I grew up in, Pritchard, the median household income is at 32,000. The median household income in Baldwin County is 64,000. And the median household income in Fairhope is 83,000. I don't really see how you can say that Mobile County and Baldwin County are communities of interest when you have like such a spread, even with the median household income, where you have one city at 32,000 and one at 83,000. Also, the unemployment rate in Bullock County, 30%, Perry, 30, Sumter, 29, Crenshaw, 17, Washington, 18. Those are very similar unemployment rates to the city of Pritchard that I represent, which is important. And the reason why I bring up Pritchard in this sense is because even though the map comes into Mobile, the one that I'm in support of, it does not take away the city of Mobile. It's different communities, which I would consider to be communities of interest within Mobile County that were pulled out, which are communities that a lot of these people from these Black Belt communities migrated to. When I look at the racial makeup in Baldwin County, the Black population make up 9% and the white population 83%. The racial population in Orange Beach, the white population is almost 98% in Orange Beach. And it's 91% for the Black population in Pritchard. I don't see how we could say that these are communities of interest if you have over 90% Black population in one city and you have over 90%, almost 100% white population. You can't even count the Black population in Orange Beach. Daphne, white population 83%. Pritchard, 90% Black population. But if you can look at a city like Selma, over 80% Black population in Selma. Mobile County, 51% Black population. I mean, city of Mobile, 51% Black population. Perry County, hell, they're all over 50, closer to 60%. Dallas County, over 70% Black population, which is very similar to on a higher scale when you look at like the Africatown community in Mobile, when you look at the city of Pritchard area, you look at the Tomaville community, you look at the Maysville community. All of these are cities that, to me, has more of a community of interest than those cities being connected with Baldwin County. It just doesn't really, the math ain't math, and it doesn't add up when you look at extremely high Black population in these areas and extremely high white population in these areas, and then we say that these are communities of interest. They are absolutely not. When you look at the median household incomes in these communities, they are absolutely not communities of interest. You have one of these communities that are right at or below the poverty line, and then on the other side, you have either the top or the second top income community in the entire state of Alabama. Those, when you fold them together, Representative Pringle, they're not communities of interest. So then I start to look even more of how Mobile and Baldwin County are communities of interest. Now I give it to you. You got the coast. That wraps us in as community of interest.
What?
The coast. The coast wraps us in as communities of interest. But let's look at this. And this is a rhetorical. You don't have to answer it because it's going to be difficult to answer it. But how many Black elected officials do we have in Baldwin County, the Baldwin County Commission, the Alabama House, the Alabama Senate, or any city or town within Baldwin County? How many do we have? It's a very difficult question.
Vivian Figures represents part of Baldwin County, doesn't she?
Okay, so that may be one.
Can I have, let's hold on a minute. Can I have everybody's attention, please? This is an important issue that we're discussing. And I know everybody wants to talk but it's hard to hear in here. And so if we would just at least hold it down to a roar where we could hear each other. But for the gentleman at the mic or the ladies and gentlemen at the mic, it's difficult because I hear Chris keep holding his ear. He's either going deaf, which it may be at his age, I don't know, but it is hard to hear in here. So please, till we get done with this process, let's kind of hold it down just a little bit. Thank y'all.
Appreciate it. Y'all know I thought I was getting gavelled down again. I was gonna say, now hold up now. I was gonna be like, not today, not today. Yeah. I'm like, I got paid to be in Jermaine right here. Not today.
That's pretty good, Brace. I have to give you credit for that.
Back to what I'm saying is, how many Black elected officials are elected between Baldwin County, whether it's the Baldwin County Commission, the House, Senate, any city or town in Baldwin County? Very, very few. Now let's take a flip of that coin and you go over to Mobile County. How many Black elected officials do we have in Mobile County within towns, cities, the county commission, the House, and the Senate? you have something totally different on this side than you have on this side. But yet we want to say that these are communities of interest, and they're absolutely not communities of interest, because even with the electability opportunities, they just don't exist. You can't get an African American elected in a city that's 98% white. It don't work. It just don't work. And what we are seeing is these numbers, what we're talking about today, the median household income, the poverty level, where these people migrated to, clearly shows that we're more closer to being a community of interest in the Black Belt, in certain communities within Mobile County. Maybe not the community where you live, maybe not the community where our friend Jerry Carl lives, but the community where I live, we are. And also, you mentioned about the Mobile County Commission giving funds for economic development, but the Baldwin County Commission didn't. So when we even talk about economics, that's also not being inclusive as a community of interest. Thank you for your time.
Wait a minute, don't you work at Austell?
I do.
Pretty good paying job.
Okay.
And the argument on the city council was, why should we give a $10 million tax break to Austell when 40% of their employees, and those are good paying jobs at Austell, 40% of those high paying employees at Austell live in Baldwin County.
That's not true.
Well, I'm just telling you what the
But I work in HR over there, so I'm telling you it's not true. It's less than 25%.
The city council was saying it was 40. I'm just reading.
But they was incorrect. They was incorrect on the data. It was less than.
But I don't think Baldwin County can reach over and give a tax break in another county. So, I'm sure Baldwin would help us, but.
Sure recognize the lady from Macon, Representative Warren.
Who's up next? Be gentle. Don't shoot.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I'm going to be real gentle to you today. I'm not feeling well, okay?
I'm sorry.
But
you would like to be seated?
As I sit and I listen to the discussion, you know, when I heard of this Supreme Court ruling, at that point, I said, oh, Lord, where are we going from here? And the whole basis of this ruling is to try to guarantee that minorities in the state of Alabama can have fair representation in Washington. We're not talking about Alabama. We're concerned about what's going on in Washington for our minorities. And we started off wrong. I'm pretty sure your leadership, y'all had your meetings. And I assure you, not one time was there a minority person at that initial meeting. And this is what we're talking about. You know, we need to be fully involved in drawing of any map, because if there's anybody who understands where we are as minorities in this country, it's us. So as we sit here and we try to determine what this district is going to look like, I personally feel that we are still sitting here wasting time, because what's going to come out of this session is what the majority wants for the minority. It's not what the minority wants, it's what the majority wants. And the reality of it, we've been held back too long. We're human beings. We're Alabama citizens. We work, we do things, but we don't have the representation that we need. In this area, and as I look at that, you talk about the similarities, you got to understand what the issues are. You got to understand what it means to live in a community where you have no 24 medical services, in a community where you have no tax resources to help your school systems, in a community where you have no resources to do little of anything. And that person, I feel, is the whole objective, is to get somebody in Washington to represent the needs of the minority in this state. And it's kind of sad, but it's the reality. Everything that's finalized in the state of Alabama is finalized by the federal government. And we're going to sit here today or tomorrow. We're going to pass a map that that the majority feels is best for the minority. And the sad part about it, Representative Pringle, it's going to end up in the courts again. And they are going to decide how we need to have a district drawn in the state of Alabama. Again, that's an embarrassment to us. Why can't we come together, put all this partisan politics? This isn't about no Democrats. This isn't about no Republicans. This is about a suffering race of people in the state of Alabama. So my advice to all of you, every one of you, take a few moments, go and stand in front of a mirror and you talk to yourself and God in that mirror and see how your facial expressions will change. Because if it's not right, it's going to always show. So whatever we do here and the final results, I'm just hoping that we can really come together and start loving each other. Because what this really borders on is hatred. When you don't want to see other folks surviving and producing positive results, it gets to be a little personal to you. And that's where I think we've lost it in all politics. We've taken out that humanistic part and we put all these political wants and wishes and egos in the place. And I'm just thank God every day that that's not why I'm here. Pebble and Warren ain't nowhere in the picture. It's all about the people that I represent and I serve. And I think if there's an opportunity for the state of Alabama to show justice, and I didn't prepare because a couple of days ago I was reading through my Bible and I was in Isaiah, and there was a portion in there where he talked about, don't worry about the unfairness, because in the end, his justice is going to be applied. So whatever we do here today, let's just do what's best for the minorities in the state of Alabama so that they can have somebody in Washington who understands and who can help them make our lives better in the state of Alabama. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair thanks the lady. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Jefferson, Representative Rafferty.
You didn't prepare. Yeah, it was, I could tell.
Thank you for the recognition, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
Representative Pringle, can you See, there was one question I think one of my colleagues asked you a little bit earlier, dealing particularly with the kind of the procedural and the process, as far as like how these maps were picked and selected, which ones would come before the committee. And I was wondering, I don't think there was enough time for you to really kind of answer that question or kind of build upon it or follow up with it. So I was wondering if you had, if you could kind of clarify that for me and my colleagues here.
Under very difficult circumstances, we did the very best job we could to turn the maps around and give them to the committee as fast as possible. I mean, we have computer issues, we have staffing issues, and we have a time constraint issue. We did the best we could. We're not trying to hide anything. We're not done. We're doing the best we can.
And how many maps came forward? I know about how many of that?
I don't remember.
You don't remember how many maps? Okay. What were some of the assumptions that we're trying to fulfill with the current map that we have before us that we might not, what are some of the assumptions or goals that we're trying to accomplish with this community of interest map?
Follow our committee guidelines and comply with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
Say what? I'm sorry?
Follow the committee guidelines and comply with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
Okay. So we are in agreement that we agree that the Voting Rights Act should stay intact as it is, particularly with Section 2 as well, correct?
I think the court ordered me to follow the Voting Rights Act, and that's what I believe this does.
And you think this follows all the three of the conditions of the Jingles test as well?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And how so? Describe that a little bit more.
I believe it's compact, it's contiguous, and it maintains communities of interest.
I'm sorry?
I believe it's compact, contiguous, and maintains communities of interest.
Okay.
And also complies with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
Well, so that's one. So the other two would be the political cohesiveness, correct?
Yeah, I believe it complies with the Jingles test. Yes, sir.
Okay. But the thing is that my understanding is that we do not have two majority and minority districts with this map. That's what I keep hearing. I hear a lot of numbers. Seen a lot of maps, a lot of pictures, but we still have not seen a majority, two majority minority districts come out of this map. Is that correct?
That is a single majority minority district and a district that performs under Section 2 and provides an opportunity for minorities to elect the candidate of their choice.
To elect and which one? So both of them you would say, but how can the minority elect their candidate of choice if they're not in the majority?
Well, even the plaintiffs under sworn testimony said 40% BVAP would suffice to provide them the opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice.
So there's actual testimony that says 40%.
Mine has over 40%. Yeah.
I still don't understand how like a majority, a minority could have, or elect or even have a reasonable or actionable chance of electing their candidate of choice without being the majority in that district, though.
Do you ever vote Republican?
Do I ever vote Republican? I'm a proud Democrat.
That's how.
I'm a proud Democrat, and well, what do you mean?
Would you not vote for the Democratic nominee in that district if you lived in it?
So what?
Would you not vote for the Democratic nominee in District 2 if you lived in it?
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
If you lived in District 2,
okay,
would you vote for the Democratic nominee or the Republican nominee for Congress?
I would probably vote for the Democrat, yeah.
At 40% BVAP, the plaintiffs testified that would suffice to give them the opportunity to elect the candidate of their choice.
Right, but it's still not majority minority, though. Minority.
But it performs.
We would also say, we could look at something like, where I live, right, my district or some other district, is that you have to give them an actionable opportunity to elect the candidate of their choice.
And your district
and the race of that candidate doesn't really pertain to the matter, correct?
Well, you live in a majority minority district, and they've elected you, and they elected Patricia Todd before you. And you live in a majority minority district.
Correct.
But they chose to elect you.
Right, but that's because they had to work and represent and try to make sure I'm representing their interests to the best of my ability.
Exactly, and that doesn't preclude any Democrat that can be elected in that district. if they're a good
Well,
candidate.
it's not about Democrats, it's not about race,
but
right?
the minority-
We're not talking about that.
the
We're talking
minor-
about majority. We're talking about the minority being able to have a reasonable or actionable chance to elect the candidate of their choice, regardless of party and regardless of the race.
And the plaintiffs in this
And how can you
lawsuit,
do that if they're not in the majority? I don't understand that. That's what I'm tryrying to get you to clarify to me, and you're not giving me the answers to
because
that.
the plaintiffs said in their filings and sworn testimony that 40% or around 40% BVAP would perform well enough for them to elect the candidate they're choosing.
And that is that what the court said?
That's
Because that's what I'm curious. I'm
But-
wondering if the court's saying
but
that.
again-
What's the court's threshold for that, for majority minority?
The court said we had to provide an opportunity, and that's what that district does. That district provides an opportunity to elect either a Republican or a Democrat, or under racial polarized voting, you would assume that it'd be an African-American or a white.
Okay. So what you're saying is, we don't really have a standard for what or criteria for what a majority minority district would.
I've never seen the Supreme Court hand down what constitutes a sufficient minority population.
Understood. How do we do it usually around here then?
What?
Well, how would we do it for like state districts or state house districts or Senate districts then?
Well, we try and maintain the core of the existing districts.
Okay. So, some of this was based off a racial polarization study, correct? And that was to satisfy a criteria of the Jingles test, if I'm not mistaken, correct? I'm asking.
I didn't do the study. So.
The racial polarization study. Can you tell me about where that racial polarization study came from, or what kind of where we got that statistic from?
That was done by, I think the plaintiffs did that study.
You think the plaintiffs did it, but you don't know who coordinated it or who put it into place. Okay. So I guess with the communities of interest as well as what we're talking about here, the court did define, or at least the district court did recognize that the Black Belt was a community of interest. So with your current map, we're not going to look at that other picture. I don't understand kind of why that they're kind of split in two there.
What are you talking about?
The Black Belt.
The Black Belt is.
Wasn't it named here? And the Roberts said specifically, the Black Belt, he emphasized, he defined by the historical boundaries, namely the group of rural counties plus Montgomery and the central part of the state. The district court treated the Black Belt as a community of interest for the same reason.
Exactly. And in the VRA plan, the Black Belt is in 2 congressional districts. And in my plan, the Black Belt's in 2 congressional districts. Both plans have the Black Belt in 2 districts.
Which one would have it much more largely intact?
That depends on what counties you consider the Black Belt.
What counties would you consider the Black Belt? Because it's historical now. I mean, we're not talking about some.
What counties do you consider the Black Belt?
I asked you the question.
Yeah, well, I don't know the answer, so could you answer it for me? I mean, traditionally, is Mobile County in the Black Belt?
Well, I know about where it is, and I would say that this map's cutting it off pretty short.
Is Mobile County traditionally considered the Black Belt?
Well, I mean, according to my colleagues, they feel like there's not much of a connection between Mobile.
But is that county listed in the 18 counties considered traditionally to be in the Black Belt?
Can you say that one more time?
Is Mobile County listed in the traditional counties named as Black Belt counties? Is Washington County listed as a traditional county in the Black Belt?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'm just trying to get to where the community of interest, I'm kind of trying to define that, but my time's up. So, but if you would like to carry this on further, I would love to.
And the gentleman's time has expired. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Montgomery, Representative Insler.
You don't have to come back. Who's coming next? Hey.
I didn't realize I had my button on, but you must be a mind reader because I didn't want to come up. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Well, first off, I do want to say, and I know you've referenced it indirectly to the district I represent. I am grateful to be standing here and be representing District 74. I am grateful, and it's a privilege to represent a majority minority district. And the point I just want to make on that is that the whole concept behind that is that it is majority minority, and then that majority of Black voters had the opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice, which I'm incredibly grateful and privileged that I was. But I think the thing that we're missing here is that you have a majority minority district, so they can then elect, whether it ends up being a white or Black candidate, that the opportunity is there. And the question then that I have is, the Supreme Court, in affirming the lower court ruling, made it very clear, and the Supreme Court, for all of their convoluted language, they said that you either draw a majority minority district or something very close to that. So the question I have is, why not just do that, make it simple, follow what the court said?
Again, the plaintiffs repeatedly said under oath that a 40% BVAP, they were comfortable that would give them the opportunity to elect a candidate of their choosing. My district is over 40, or is it 42%, a little over BVAP? So it complies with what the plaintiffs said in their sworn testimony. And I think that given, if you do an analysis of the second district, it provides the opportunity for the Democrats to elect the candidate of their choice. It gives the minorities to elect the Democrat, the candidate of their choosing, because they have 40% BVAP.
Sure. So and with all due respect to the plaintiffs and Mr. Milligan and Ms. Stone and all the others, we're going off of what the court has said, right? The plaintiffs nor the defendants ruled. It's what the court said, and the court's very plain, direct language is have a majority minority district or something very close there too. So why even risk having the lower court say, well, you didn't do what we said, and then spend more time on either a special master or taxpayer dollars that are going to go towards defending it? Why not just do the more sure thing of what the court said?
We're trying to comply with the committee. We're trying to comply with the committee guidelines and the Voting Rights Act. And remember, Section 2 does not guarantee a minority-majority district. It requires an equal opportunity to elect the candidate of their choice. And I believe this map here provides an equal opportunity for the minorities to elect a candidate of their choice. Section 2 does not guarantee election.
It doesn't guarantee
You're living proof of it.
Right. It doesn't guarantee it. So, but by having a majority minority district, that is then allowing people, though, in this case, Black voters, to have the opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice. So why not just, again, follow exactly what the court said and draw a map that way, and then give Black voters the opportunity to do that?
We're trying to avoid racial gerrymandering.
So it's not, and I keep hearing that, and I appreciate the consideration for that, but the court didn't say that you can't take race into consideration. They said that it can't be solely based off of that, which is why I know there are the other factors around community interest, looking at precincts, looking at keeping counties whole. So it is the totality there and looking at the full picture. But I just want to be clear that there's a difference between racial gerrymandering, where that is the sole and only factor, versus it being one of many. So we're allowed to use race. The Supreme Court made that clear. That can be a factor. It just can't be purely based off of that.
Exactly. And mine took a race into consideration, but it was not the sole driving factor. We used the guidelines, we used the Voting Rights Act, and we provided an opportunity under Section 2.
So in this breakdown here, where it's, the words have been used, it's a toss-up, or there's an equal opportunity. In your, I know we operate sometimes in hypotheticals here, real world prediction, what happens in a situation like that? Will minority voters have the opportunity to truly elect the candidate of their choice?
Again, I'm not going to predict the future, but I will tell you, based on past performance, that district gives the minorities the opportunity to elect the candidate of their choice in the past. I don't know what the future holds.
Going back to the point about the court saying, the lower court and the Supreme Court affirming, have a majority, minority, or something very close there too.
Opportunity.
So opportunity, but what they said though was that you have an opportunity district by either having to be majority, minority, or quite close to that. So what would your definition be of quite close? Because it's clearly not majority, minority, so.
I believe the plaintiffs said it very clearly in their depositions that at 40% BVAP, they would satisfy the opportunity.
So again, not going off of what the plaintiff said, what to the court, do you think in good faith that a court would say that 40-something% is quite close to a majority?
The last time I checked, the plaintiffs won, and they won saying 40% would do.
They did win, but again, we have to make sure that the court then agrees with what we are submitting. The court did not rule and say that the plaintiff's map or the plaintiff's definitions were right. What they said was that the plaintiffs are most likely to succeed on the merits that the current map is a violation. So the court did not rubber stamp and say that the plaintiff's map is the end all be all or that's what we have to do. They said the plaintiff's arguments that the current map violates the Voting Rights Act and then left it up for us to get it right.
Court told us we had to provide an opportunity, and I believe the 2nd Congressional District complies with Section 2 and it provides them an opportunity to win.
Okay. Last question and point on a less of a legal note. You know, I do want to go on the record and say this. It is, you know, it tugs at my heartstrings to hear some of my colleagues, Ms. Boyd, Mayor Jones, and others who have been fighting this for so long, and they are pleading for us to just do the right thing. And I appeal to you on a humanitarian level, from man to man, servants of God, to everyone in this chamber, put aside the laws for a second, put aside the Constitution, put aside the parties, right? It is about, on a very basic level, we have colleagues in here that are saying that for decades and decades, this has been the same thing over and over and over again. And why can't we just, as they've said, do the right thing? This is a disrespect and disgrace to them on a human level. And I just want to acknowledge those concerns and hear loud and clear that how deeply personal and hurtful this is. It's, again, not just about politics and power. It's about, are we respecting and seeing one another for who each other are? Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Tuscaloosa, Representative England.
Tell your wife to bring me some damn nana pudding. I did touch that part of the stuff. It's okay. It's okay. It's a conference if you need to.
All right, thank you for recognition. I don't have very long, and I've got a lot of work to do. First and foremost, I cannot. Some of the things you said, man, I swear to God, have driven me crazy back there. And I got to say, first and foremost, did you tell Representative Jones that you and Senator Livingston met to determine what maps were going to be on the agenda for the second public hearing?
We are the co-chairman of the committee. And again, we're trying to get as much information out as we possibly could.
No, the question I ask you, did you and Senator Livingston make the determination of what maps were going to be on that agenda?
I mean, the chairman always determines what's on.
So that's a yes?
Yeah.
Okay. This is that agenda. The very first map on this agenda is the opportunity map. When we met, you told us that you didn't know where that map came from. You also told us it came from the internet.
And I told you I subsequently found out after the fact it was sent in by Chris Brown.
So you mean to tell me that you and Senator Livingston were talking about the agenda, and the first map, the opportunity map, that later turned into his map in the Senate, he didn't tell you that was coming?
That was actually Senator Dan Roberts brought
This,
that.
no, this map is the Senate, it's the Livingston congressional map in the Senate. So you mean to tell me that the two people who were in charge of the agenda, one didn't tell the other that that was my map?
It came in as Senator Dan Roberts' map, and then Senator Livingston decided to carry it in the chamber.
So again,
It came in from Chris Brown as Senator Dan Roberts' map.
so nobody told you that?
I didn't know where it came from. I didn't say Livingston did.
But it starts to make a little bit more sense why it ended up on the agenda as the first one.
Well,
But secondly, let's take that a step further. You keep saying that you had to take public input before you made a map. So isn't it possible to submit a map, take public input, and then change it based on that input?
Well, I was trying to take the input before I put a map out.
Well, several, as a matter of fact, one of the parties that came before the committee actually took public comment and went and changed it. I'm trying to figure out why you were incapable of doing that on yours. Take public input. Here's my map. Oh, public input, and then I go back and amend it based upon that input.
We made a decision to take the public input because of the compressed amount of time. If I'd had 6 weeks or 6 months to do this, it would be a totally different process.
But the point I'm trying to make is everybody
And
has
I'd also
the
like to
same
point
time
out that
constraints that you were and managed to do it successfully. But what happens is the process gets circumvented, and the only two maps that we're considering are the ones that had no public input at all. Also, let me ask you another question. You mentioned, this is your map, correct? This is yours.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me the justification for the county splits in Jefferson and Tuscaloosa County?
The Tuscaloosa County, I believe, is the same as existing, and the Jefferson County, we widen it out to pick up populations.
What population?
I can't tell you exactly what voting precincts were added.
This is your map. What's the justification for the county split?
Deviation.
Question. You said earlier that that was a racial gerrymandering.
I did not say that.
Yes, you did. As a matter of fact, when you were discussing the map that I submitted, you said that those splits were racial gerrymanders.
I said
So are you contending that not only is this the court drawn, because the seventh congressional district was drawn by a court many years ago. That split came from a court.
Exactly.
So the figures plan that I submitted has the same splits. It actually has the same splits that your map has, with the exception of one. So my question for you is, if it's not a racial gerrymandering on your map, then what makes it a racial gerrymandering on the substitute?
Mobile and Houston County.
I'm glad you said that, because the court specifically rejected the losing argument that you keep making up here. The court has already told you, and the defendants in this case, that the split on the black belt is actually allowed for the purposes of satisfying the Voting Rights Act. The same argument that you're continuing to make, that the Supreme Court already told you has been rejected, is the same one that supports the plaintiff's VRA map. It's drawn specifically to satisfy the court order, to satisfy the VRA and state traditional mapping principles. It does it better than yours. And as a matter of fact, we don't even know what map we're going to be dealing with in 2 days, because the companion, your co-chair, who apparently doesn't talk to you about what maps that they're offering, their maps have even worse splits and even lower percentages. So at some point, y'all are going to have to square for us what the underlying percentages and performance data is on whatever map you decide. But I can guarantee you, it doesn't matter which map you pick, they're both going to fail. And you know this, because your primary argument about a community of interest has already been rejected. So do you magically think that they're going to accept it now? Interestingly enough, also, one of the things you said in front of the committee yesterday when you were presenting a map is that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
And a totally different context, is it? You're taking that out of context.
No, the context fixed because you continue to do the same thing and expect different results.
I was talking
and
about
we've been
another
doing
issue.
it since 2017. Every time we go before the Supreme Court, they tell you that Alabama has become professional racial gerrymanders. That's why we keep coming back doing these maps over and over and over again. So again, your map is the quintessential definition of non-compliant. It drops the BVAP in both the 2nd and the 7th congressional districts. It takes rejected arguments and memorializes them in a map, and we're going to give it right back to you and tell you to take it or leave it. Well, I can tell you, you can save your time, you can save your money, because we're going to be with a special master drawing this map. But let me tell you something, I kind of understand the principle here because I believe that's what you want. Look, do I honestly believe, does anybody in here honestly believe that you want to be subject to the Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act anymore? We're going to take as many bites of the apple as possible by sending non-compliant maps to try to finish off the Voting Rights Act. You got Shelby County to do Section 5, and this community of interest or opportunity map from the Senate is going to be what it takes to try to get rid of Section 2. That's why you're taking these extremely non-compliant maps back to the court. You've been offered an opportunity here today to take a map that is fully compliant, examples of which have already been submitted to the court, and they have said on multiple occasions that these maps work. And again, I will suggest to you that the map that I submitted to you, we got plenty of opportunities to go through this again, because we're going to do it again once we determine what the opportunity map looks like. But again, it's funny it's called opportunity because it really looks like only opportunities for a bunch of Republicans. But the map that I submitted to you complies with state redistricting principles, it complies with the VRA, and it certainly complies with the court order, and the state of Alabama would do well to take it instead of doing this exercise in futility. Thank you.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Dallas, Representative Cheston.
Welcome back.
Yield? Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there's been a lot of information that's come out here today. And if you recall, everybody recalls, when I started here earlier, I laid out how we got here. Went back to the 15th Amendment and brought it up to at least 1992, right?
Yes, sir.
We had to be mandated to draw a map that would permit Black people to have a candidate of their choice elected in the 7th congressional district. Now here we are, decades later, where the population has shifted and we're now at 27%. And the court used the history, the tortured history of how Alabama treats its Black voters to get us to this point. And the record is replete. Even your experts agreed that Black voters cannot elect their candidates of choice under the current scheme. And so if that is the case, then the only remedy is to draw a 2nd congressional district that is a majority minority or something very close to it. Now, the court found that there were several maps that were found to be in compliance with constitutional with constitutional restrictions. So the court found that there was a majority minority district, that the one that was drawn that was similar to the figures map, and that in that map you had northern Mobile County joined with the Black Belt. And the court said that was acceptable. Now, you maintained here since committee meeting and here today that if you go into Mobile County, that it's gerrymandering. Well, I have a map right here. This map shows the concentration of population in the state of Alabama for its Black residents. And if you would take a look down at the bottom left-hand corner, Mobile County, you see very dark blue and you see a little light blue in that area to show the concentration. So a map that includes northern Mobile County with the Black Belt would meet all of the constitutional guidelines and would not be racial gerrymandering because it is contiguous, it is compact, and on top of it, a district of that nature would have little to no deviation from the other 6 districts in the state. Now, there was also some discussion with Neil Rafferty and Philip Ensler about them having majority minority districts, and that is true. Neil Rafferty has a 59% Black district. Philip Ensler has a 55% Black district. And yet, the preferred choice of the majority of the Black people who live in those districts were Neil Rafferty and Philip Ensler. So the idea that Black people are monolithic is not true. So Black people decided through looking at these 2 gentlemen that they would be the best folks to represent their interests. So the system worked when it came to those 2 districts. It's not a problem. And Black people might very well, with a second majority minority district, may decide to vote for a white person if he speaks to their interests. And so the system worked. And I want to ask another question. What was the level of engagement and involvement with any Black people or Black voters within the Black Belt, within the northern Mobile area, about the drawing of your map? Was there any input whatsoever?
Well, we had the plaintiff's maps. We had all the maps coming in from the plaintiffs to review and analyze.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because the United States Supreme Court looked at the plaintiff's maps, several which had two majority minority districts, and found those maps to be acceptable. So if we already know those maps are acceptable, why not select one of those maps instead of creating a map that has the intent of depriving and denying Black voters their right to select a candidate of their choice.
So you're saying that race cannot be compromised at all? The drawing, or you cannot compromise on race?
Pardon me?
You can't compromise on race? You said something, the race cannot be compromised on?
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. What I said was, I'm going to say this. The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court looked at the record. So did Brett Kavanaugh, and so did 3 others. And they came to the conclusion that the maps that the plaintiffs introduced that had two majority minority districts was acceptable. And so why are we as a state creating a map to deprive Black citizens of their right to select a candidate of their choice?
Section 2 provides that opportunity. I'm sorry, District 2 provides that opportunity under my map.
But District 2 was drawn with the intent of preserving the 6 legislative districts that aren't held by Terry Sewell.
It was drawn to comply with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
Okay.
The court ruled on voting rights. They didn't rule on gerrymander. They ruled on Voting Rights Act, that we needed to provide the opportunity for an opportunity district. And I believe 2nd District does it.
But if I've just told you that the Supreme Court looked at those maps that the plaintiff introduced and stated those maps were just fine and they would pass constitutional muster, then why would you create an unconstitutional map and try to substitute it?
The Supreme Court found those maps that were submitted as a demonstration of liability, but even the Milligan and Castor plaintiffs don't propose adopting the plans introduced in the hearing as a remedy. Are any of those 4 plans proposed as a remedy right now?
Excuse me?
Are any of the 4 plans that were put into the plaintiffs, the court, are any of those proposed as a remedy right now? Are you using any of those as a remedy?
Okay, I'm sorry. It looks like I'm about to be in. I want to know how long will we have to consider to deal with this? My ancestors dealt with it 100 years ago.
And the gentleman's time
We're
has
still dealing with it
expired.
now.
Question for the body now is passage of HB 5. Those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. Clerk will unlock the machine and the members will vote.
John.
Clerk will lock the machine and record the votes. 74 ayes, 2 abstentions, 27 noes. HB 5 has passed.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank the gentleman. Chair would like to recognize Kathy Phillips from Dothan, the guest of Representative Jeff Sorrells and Chairman Paul Lee, as well as Leadership Selma, Alabama, Dallas, Perry counties, the guest of Representative Chestnut. Let's give him a big hand for being with us today. Clerk, call the next bill on the regular order calendar.
On page 2 of the calendar, House Bill number 2 by Representative Carnes relating to the Constitution of Alabama in 2022.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A handout is being put out around the room right now, but the BIR is something that has been bounced around for quite a number of years. This handout that I'm giving you is giving you a background on that. Is that better? It's giving a background on that. I'm just going to give the most recent background, and that is about 4 years ago, we changed the way we were doing things because we were getting some lawsuits on the process. We changed to where we had to have 32 BIRs on a local bill, 32 votes. That worked out by being 53 would be a quorum, and then you would take 3/5 of 53. Okay, move for passage. Okay. Okay. So the 32 was working in a way, except 32 yeses on the BIR, we could have maybe 50 abstentions. So if you do the math on that, then, and you count the abstentions as votes, which is being done in some court cases, then you have less than 3/5. So the bills were passed without a BIR. The things that we are attempting to do in this, we're just doing a few minor changes, but all we're doing is saying that you do not have to have on a constitutional amendment or a bill that is a local bill, you do not have to have a BIR. That will keep us out of harm's way on many lawsuits. And the lawsuits that we have are a result of me standing here. And this is something that leadership has asked me to handle because it is a problem for the full legislative process. And so with that, Mr. Speaker, I would answer any questions or ask for passage.
Chair recognizes the lady from Jefferson, Representative Gilliland.
I'm good.
Hey, you may have done it, but remind everybody, this is a CA.
Thank you for the recognition. Let me just get the clarity on this because I remember when we made the change a few years ago and some of the circumstances surrounding that. So what brought this about that we now no longer need to have the BIR?
Well, the premise that we wound up going to previous to this was being challenged. As I just said, it was 32, but we were getting abstentions of maybe 40, 50, 60 abstentions, and then you add that to the 32, then we do not have a 3/5 vote on the BIR. So that is what brought this about. And, you know, the courts, you know, are something we have to deal with. And if people are bringing lawsuits based on a BIR not having the actual numbers required.
Yeah, because and the reason I'm just trying to get the clarity for myself because these BRs get to be real tricky, and I know folks do bring these. They look for any reason to contest it, especially local bills. No differently, you know, we see it all the time, just dealing with just the notice and proof and how they are written, and any type of slight modification or deviation.
Very true.
You find yourself in court. You know, I questioned some things a few weeks ago just in one of our committee meetings, and it was really to save us because I knew what ultimately could possibly happen with that particular legislation that we were going to possibly try to move out. So this bill, we would basically do away with it if we pass this amendment.
Yeah, this is a constitutional amendment. It would be on the ballot on March the 5th of 2024.
Oh, it's 2024.
Yeah, right.
Okay, and so what will we do in the meantime? In the meantime, we would still...
Everything's the same until
2024.
Right.
So, but if there is a challenge prior to 2024, it would be subject to challenge, or it would be, okay. All right, I just wanted to, I'll get with Otney to get some further.
Okay, it's very technical to a degree. It's very simple, but it can get very technical.
Very technical. Yeah, and it's something that we really need to need to pay attention to, especially with, again, because these local bills can really, you can get tripped up with a local.
True, and you know, Othny is the one we go to on these issues, and he's the one that wrote this bill, so.
Oh, I understand. Yeah, I think he came to one of the meetings. I'm not a part of that meeting caucus at this point. So, but I did hear that he did come. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Chair thanks the lady. The question for the body now is passage of HB 2. Clerk will unlock the machines and the members will vote.
Okay.
Clerk will lock machine, record the votes. 102 ayes, 1 nay. HB 2 has passed.
Thank you very much.
Thank the gentleman.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from Lee, Representative Lovern.
Mr. Speaker, I have a report.
Clerk, see the report.
House Joint Resolution number 3 by Representative Mooney commending Oak Mountain Middle School on the occasion of the 30th anniversary and congratulating Dr. Larry Haynes on the occasion of his retirement. House Joint Resolution number 5 by Representative Lamb commending the Geological Survey of Alabama on its 175 years of outstanding service to the state of Alabama. Senate Joint Resolution number 5 by Senator Allen commending the Geological Survey of Alabama on its 175 years of outstanding service to the state of Alabama.
Move for adoption.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? They are adopted.
Senate Joint Resolution number 1 by Senator Wagner. Committee appointed to notify the governor that the legislature is in special session.
Move for adoption.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? It is adopted.
Senate Joint Resolution number 3 by Senator Bell, establishing the Joint Study Commission on Advanced Air Mobility.
Move for adoption.
Chair recognizes the lady from Madison, Representative Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you help me to understand exactly what that means?
Well, the priority is through Congress to make sure that the advanced air mobility is recognized, the importance of Alabama. It was proposed by Senator Bell that just with our jet propulsion, our mobility, and the importance of Huntsville and everything dealing with air mobility is just supportive of the importance of Alabama when we're looking at things like Space Command, the bases, the rotorcraft we have at the different forts, and just supports stability with that, and the task force to work towards finding ways to continue that importance of Alabama when it comes to air mobility.
Could you tell me the makeup of the task force?
Well, got the resolution here. Let me look through. The membership of the committee will be the lieutenant governor or his designee, 3 members of the Senate to be appointed by the President Pro Tem of the Senate, and one of whom shall be a member of the minority party, 3 members of the House of Representatives to be appointed by the Speaker of the House, one of whom shall be a member of the minority party, Secretary of Alabama State Law Enforcement Agency or his or her designee, 2 individuals experienced in aviation aeronautical design to be appointed by the President Pro Tem of the Senate, 2 individuals experienced in aviation or aeronautical design to be appointed by the Speaker of the House. Membership of the Study Commission shall be inclusive and reflective of racial, gender, geographic, urban, rural, and economic diversity of the state.
So do you mind giving me that last paragraph, whereas such, or the one just before? I'm just trying to, when you say advanced air mobility, I'm assuming we're talking about rockets or stuff. I'm trying to understand exactly what are we looking at as advanced air mobility?
Well, you're well aware from Huntsville, the importance from jet propulsion to getting us to the moon to the importance of helicopter rotorcraft and across from the wiregrass. And so how this leads into stabilizing, maintaining that Alabama maintains a role in that when we look at it from a national world stage.
Key word right there. The fact that Alabama will play a key role in making sure whatever that is, that we are at the table.
Yes, ma'am.
May I have a copy of that one, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Chair thanks the lady. Question for the body now is passage and adoption of the resolution. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? It is adopted.
Senate Joint Resolution number 4 by Senator Weaver, recognizing September 17th, 2023 as Hank Williams Day.
Move for adoption.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is adopted. Thank you, gentlemen. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Mobile for purpose of motion.
Mr. Speaker, having previously agreed to reconvene tomorrow at 10 a.m., I move the House adjournment, yeah, because we're going to leave the journal open. Stand in adjournment.
You've heard the request, leave the journal open.
Yeah, we already did it.
All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.